Hello and welcome everybody to another weekly esports podcast. My name is Scam and I'm your host for today. And once again, I'm joined by two lovely people that we'll be able to trash talk esports with. On the one side, we have Steven. Hey, Steven.
What's up?
And on the other side, we have another writer, another freelance writer. Replacing Sam for this week, it is Pao, aka Sandata. What's up, dude?
Hello everyone. Doing well. It's 1 a.m. There's a rooster crowing. I want to die, so
That's the esports life, I believe. Well,
Yeah,
I haven't had a
normal
rooster
day.
close to me yet, but yeah, 1 a.m. sounds about right.
Ugh.
Anyway, let's
Oh, yeah.
let's head right into it. I think we have a lot to cover this week. Let's start off with some general news, and it is one of those sort of like classic investments. Ronaldo, the former Brazilian legend in football, aka soccer for those Americans out there, invests into the Brazilian esports club CNB. I don't know. I guess it's like some. I don't know. I guess it's some sort of standard at this point for these people to invest, but it's still pretty cool to see, right?
It is. It is. I think it's just a standard business move at this point. I'm pretty sure there's a consortium of people advising these guys that, hey, this is the next big thing. It's still a competitive edge. Maybe you should put your money into it. So it's still nice. I don't know a lot about the Brazilian scene to make a judgment if it's a smart investment, but it's cool to see.
For the Brazilian scene, I think their best esport is probably CS:GO. I don't think that's a strange thing to say, but I think this was for the league. This for League of Legends,
Yeah,
right?
this is for League of Legends.
Yeah.
I heard it was pretty decent actually for League of Legends too, so I'm not exactly sure. But either way, I guess he just wanted to invest. I know. There's the other football player who was getting into CS:GO, it was like with the SK guys, Neymar. Neymar.
Yeah,
Neymar.
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 Yeah. So, I guess I'm not really surprised or impressed. It's just like standard as usual, I guess. I mean, I'm not sure what else to say about it.
Pretty much. It's just yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to bring it up because I think it's just really interesting to see that I don't know that there's like a lot of these sort of traditionally popular people, like the Ronaldo, Neymar, and then even other football stars, NFL stars, getting into esports. But I guess it'll take a while before we really see an impact in that. Like, not sure if you guys saw there was like a FIFA documentary recently, like FIFA the game, and they did like a documentary on their own World Cup series, and they had like Steven Gerrard, who's like also a famous soccer player. They interviewed him basically, and I think it'll take a while for those kind of people to actually be in front of the camera and actually endorse esport or actively talk about esports. But I think this is like sort of like we're currently at the beginning of this, basically.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's also well, what I'm fearing is that they're going to do that same sort of faux pas where they come in and then they say, "Oh yeah, using what I learned from the sports world, we can make esports really really big and turn it from this one into that one."
Talk
So
about
I hope,
watch that.
right. It happens a lot. So I hope for if this trend is going to continue, I hope they get better advice. More level-headed, more grounded advice, so that they don't come in and sort of turn off people, the people that they're supposed to connect with, away from them with the highfalutin sort
I
of
was more
claims.
thinking of the way they were trying to do the drafting, where like they're fucking up all the teams. But we'll see.
And
We'll
it's
see how
also
that
that.
We'll see how it
It's also
goes.
that. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, though. And I guess this is a larger topic in itself, but and we don't have to dive too deep into it. But you see a lot of esports organizations themselves make those decisions. They're like, "Oh yeah, we want to be more like traditional sports, so let's do this." Or like, I mean, look at Blizzard. What they're doing now with those, with the Overwatch League, or what they intend to do.
What? Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It is
What
basically
they're
trying.
doing.
Yeah, it's basically trying to mimic traditional sports more so than
More so than normal.
yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's
but I
nothing
mean,
inherently wrong with it, right? Like on a
It's-
theoretical
it's-
level,
it's
there's
not.
nothing really wrong.
It's not, but I personally am not a big fan of localization in esports. I mean, I know that in CS, for example, it's sort of well, that, but it also naturally moved in that direction to some degree, because teams naturally stuck to nations. Like, oh, we're just gonna have like a full French team, full Swedish lineup, that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
Right.
That might be more due to the fact that in CS, well, there's two things. First, like there's the comms, obviously,
yeah,
but the more important thing I think is ping.
true.
Because
It's a bigger.
I know ping beyond like 30 in CS 1.6 was
Yeah.
nearly impossible to play with. So it naturally like forces you to want to play with people that are nearby just for the ping.
True,
That's
definitely.
my guess.
Definitely. It's not as big of a deal as it is in Dota. It's wait, other way around. It is a much bigger deal than it is in Dota, for example. And I think this is why in Dota we have so many different nationalities combined in different teams. But that's also what I like about esports in general, that we have the possibilities to have, like, say, a Brazilian move into Europe or whatever, or vice versa, like a Russian kid or a Ukrainian kid moving to an A and placing second at TI.
Or like even like a multi like European squad, like what FaZe has in CS:GO right now. Those are pretty interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah, basically what I'm thinking about in Overwatch is they're kind of making some weird opposite scenario where they're doing a bunch of things in like opposite direction. I don't know if it'll work or not, but that's kind of how I see it right now. Where they're like, yeah, we're gonna get right now. I think they have more NBA sponsors than they have actual teams or something.
I think so.
It's
too.
like kind of
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a buyer's market.
Yeah, and I really don't believe in their. I really don't believe they can do a draft well. I mean, I'll see what the tests are before making a final judgment. But like if they're thinking of doing a draft like they do in the NBA or football, the thing is like running, jumping, shooting. Those are like tangible things you can look at. APM, it's not that great. How are you gonna measure game sense? Like, yeah, I guess you can measure a guy who can hit heads, but that's not that great overall. It's like I'm pretty iffy.
The metrics, the metrics are going to be interesting for us to talk about when they do release more information, because it's already January. It's almost the end of January. There's nothing on it, but just to wrap up the whole Overwatch trying to do the sports thing. I mean, sports has had the value of years and years of people collecting metrics so that they have, I think, a better understanding of what things to look out for in these combines. And it's not an exact science for these combines anyway. Like for some of the baseball scouts, for example, some of them look like weird things like leg strength or something like that. But so in esports, it's gonna come down to what kind of metrics they take, and is that actually valuable? And if it isn't, well, then the experience is gonna fail, and it might take the entire infrastructure.
As far as I'm concerned, the only way you can do it with team games or even individual games is just running a bunch of tournaments, and then you can measure all the different things through results.
But even then, I think esports is still such a I want to call it immature game where personalities just matter so much more so than skill, almost to a degree, right? You can have the 5 most individually skilled players on one team, but if they don't mesh well together on a personal level or on a communication level, you're not gonna succeed. And I mean, we've seen it in a lot of teams already, right? I mean, Team Secret last year, or not last year, 2 years ago. They crashed and burned because they had internal issues at TI.
I mean, it did work for those 3-4 tournaments.
It did work for every tournament outside of TI, but that's not the point, basically. So, I don't know. That's I'm also very much questioning the whole Overwatch League.
The owls. Structure. You're questioning the owls.
Yeah, pretty much. But we'll see. Like Steven said, I'll gladly wait and see, and if they can prove me wrong, I'll definitely go out there and be like, hey, yeah, sorry guys, but I don't know. I just have my doubts.
Yeah, me too.
Anyway,
well, I think we're out there. Yeah.
Anyway, there's just been a bunch of other investments. There's like this Indian billionaire that invested into esports, which is pretty cool.
That'll surely turn out well.
Oh yeah, that sounds like a great idea, and I'm reading into the report right now, and the red flag that I'm seeing immediately is that number one, esports in India is still small by international measures, but has high potential for growth. So this has what this looks like to me, and I think we lost Stephen, but what this looks like to me is that this is going to be a venture, one of those venture deals where he thinks they're buying in big right now. They think it's gonna grow so much, so big in the next few years, and then it turns out, well, they didn't really study the market. Like, for example, I don't necessarily agree with putting that much money into India, for example. You could probably put it in the region and then grow India, or I don't know. It doesn't look that good to me. That doesn't look like a smart deal for me.
I don't really understand what exactly they're trying to do. So, but I mean, I'm not really affected by it either.
Oh yeah,
because I'm not really
definitely
in the esports scene. So
maybe
it'll. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it is one of those things. When, for example, when Alibaba, like the guys behind WSG, announced their investment, it's one of those things where you're wondering, you see those announcements, but what is the immediate impact? Are you ever going to really see any of that investment come to fruition at some point? Because there's been a lot of people already like connected to investments, and there's been a lot of like announcements and that kind of stuff, but I think Alibaba is the only one that really immediately pulled through and like immediately started out doing something. Like
maybe did something tangible. Yeah,
exactly. So I don't know. I just think it's really interesting to see that there's. I mean, the Indian market, like you said, there's basically no notable esports happening in India, or at least there's no notable players or teams. So maybe there is a market, we don't know yet. And apparently, according to the article by Esports. Written by... Oh, no, it wasn't written by Sam. God damn it. According to them, ESL also is just about to host the ESL India Premiership with like 64,000 in prize pool. So, obviously, there is at least some sort of esports happening there, but we don't know if it's really going to be great or not.
I guess if we were... like, okay, so let's try and be a little bit fair here intellectually, right? So, on one hand, you could argue that these sort of stories, they're good because then you can see that the esports pie is growing, but on a grassroots level. Like, this is what it looks like to me. Like, they're trying to jumpstart the local Indian industry so that, it'll grow, it'll have its own thing, which is good. That's what happened for example, in 2006 for the Philippines. And now, like 10 years later, 11 years later, the Philippines is a good place to put your esports events in Southeast Asia. Right, that's what happened here, and it started with Dota. So maybe that's what they're trying to do over there. Maybe they're trying to, put themselves in a position where 5-7 years later they're gonna ride this global sort of this global interest in esports, and then eventually they're gonna cut down that growth period from 10 years to 5 years. What I don't know is how competent the people are in there. So.
Well, I mean, I guess the worst case scenario, what's going to happen is maybe you'll get a good team out of that region, which might be worth it.
Yeah, true.
Just by enjoyment. I mean, that's all you can really hope for, right?
All right. Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
It's a roulette. That's all I was going to say. it's a roulette at that point.
It's a roulette.
I was basically just going to switch topics to the next. I'm going to call this another investment as well, even though it's not really. Well, I guess it is sort of an investment, but and this is written by Sam, by the way, so he could have repped his own article here. But a university in Toronto is now handing out esports, or they will be taking applications for esports scholarship starting next year, I believe, which is pretty interesting because Canadian esports is pretty big. If you consider how many successful Canadian esports players there are. I mean, RTZ, Envy, just to name a few.
RTZ, Envy,
AUI,
Puck, Scarlet.
Yeah, exactly. So there's like a lot of talent in Canada.
Actually, no, I'm pretty sure he was American. Just didn't even think of something else.
I mean, there's definitely a lot of Dota players. I'm trying to think. CS.
No, there were a pretty famous CS. Yeah, Jaguar was one of them.
All right.
In a way, and then there's a few on Liquid, I think, and then definitely a few on Optic. Actually, no, it wasn't Liquid. It was Optic. I was thinking of.
Is Maxwell Canadian?
NAF, NAF and
Oh, right.
So was Daps, but he's not on that team anymore. Yeah, those two are pretty good. So I mean, and I know they're making some kind of Toronto esports team. Like it's just straight up called Toronto. I remember Eternal Envy was trying to like make some kind of Canadian-based union for esports. I'm not exactly sure. Anyway, this is kind of similar to what Street Fighter was doing, where there was some kind of weird scholarship for like game design for esports or something.
Yeah,
a bunch of people got that.
Oh yeah.
It was always kind of weird because it was just a bunch of people who were getting it who everybody already knew. So like, why do you need this? You're already in the esports scene.
You're already
So I was
money.
like, are people just giving out money or what's going on? But I don't really understand because nothing ever came of it, as far as I could see. But this seems more better.
This is
legit.
Well, that's the question. Like, I'm really curious as well. Like, who does this apply to? Because it says esports scholarship, right? Esports would imply that to a certain degree you're already like an active competitor, or does it mean just like could I apply, for example, if I just like keep grinding and I'm like part of an amateur team, for example? Does that already count?
Right.
Because
I was gonna say that. Yeah, no, go ahead.
Yeah, because for people like you said, for people that are already in the scene and that are already known, I mean, I'm pretty sure Envy doesn't need a scholarship if he wanted to go back. I think he could afford that. I mean, it's nice the fact that he could technically still apply for a scholarship. I think that's really good, especially for, say, middle of the, like not necessarily super successful esports players. Say if AUI hadn't won TI, right? If he hadn't won TI, he wouldn't have really any noticeable results, I think, in Dota. At least not any noticeable tournament wins. Well, I guess he placed second place a bunch of times.
A lot of second places.
Yeah.
So.
But still, I don't know. I guess it could be nice for like esports players even to like tier 2 players maybe to fall back. But even those, I think, to a degree, could probably afford it.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's always the big question mark with stories like this. So we had the story about UC Irvine last year, and then there was that there was a story in 2015 about another university in Korea that was also opening up scholarships, and maybe they have this as part of their program, but there's always that question that that begs to be asked. How does it apply to you? Does it mean that the campus itself is going to put up a team, and if you're part of that team, you're part of a scholarship program, like traditional sports where they're part of the NCAA? Or, are you already part of a team? And if you're so, what do I do? If I show that I'm part of the, whatever Dota team with a dumb name, like, I don't know, like before, like no Tidehunter, bottom, like, oh, here, I'm part of this Dota 2 team that's not, it's still on the amateur ranks. If I show that to you on enrollment day, will you grant me a scholarship? So it's weird. Does it also mean that esports scholarships, do they have their own programs? Like, do they have their own set of courses, or do they have their own syllabus? I don't know. It's always a question with these sort of stories.
That's kind of weird, right? What would they
exactly?
I guess maybe it's connected to the collegiate league. Like there were a few of those. Like I'm thinking, like there was one in StarCraft 2 for a while, and then there was one in Heroes.
And Heroes, Heroes has the like whole Heroes of the Dorm thing.
Yeah, so. Heroes of the Dorm. It has TESPA. So with those questions though, what happens if you're a Dota, if you're an aspiring Dota player? Right?
Like you're just screwed.
You're left in the dust, right? So it's weird. I hope there's more stuff out there for us to accurately judge that sort of thing.
I don't want to put it down. We just don't have enough information.
Yeah, exactly.
That's any of the details.
Yeah. But I guess there's something that just to keep in the back of our heads, if something resurfaces again with more information, that I don't know. I think it's an interesting topic, though. I think it's pretty cool. Like
it is.
It just goes to show that there's more. I don't know, that esports is getting recognition, I guess.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean I worked with a local newspaper here in the Philippines when they first started to try and have more esports stories, and this is always a kind of story that the newspaper editorial board would send to me. Oh, make something about this university picking up esports, and it's always a question that you should keep in the back of your head. So every time you see a story like this, ask that question. We can't judge if it's good or bad. We know that it's feel good, but feel good isn't enough. So
Mhm.
hopefully they release more
More
because it'll
information.
be really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, really interesting.
All right. I think this wraps up our general news coverage, and let's move into Dota 2. Before we get to DotaPit, though, let's talk about some other basic standard news. NIP, they are back in Dota 2, and
Yay!
they picked up syndereN and his
syndereN
team.
and friends.
syndereN and friends, yes.
Yeah, Cinder friends.
All right, I have a lot of thoughts about this, but I'm gonna let you guys start first. What do you guys think about this venture?
I like Koifa, so
You know, like it's cool that syndereN wants to keep doing this like player thing. I just thought he was I thought he was one of the best casters Dota 2 had. So I was
Yeah.
kind of a little bit part of me was hoping he'd fail and then be forced back to casting or something. But if he wants to keep playing, good for him.
See, that's what I think a lot of people feel. I think even Toby made like some joke about syndereN not qualifying for the major or for TI, so he could cast with him.
he could cast by his side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Toby syndereN's a great combination.
It is, and I definitely think. I mean, I feel the same. I personally would love to have him as a caster, but just because he is such a nice guy and such like I don't know, just a likable guy, you kind of do want him to succeed. But at the same time, this team or Escape already was kind of eh. Escape at TI was very eh. I will say, obviously, they at least did make it to TI. They pulled through the open qualifier, through the wildcards, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's, you gotta at least give them some credit, but ever since then they've just been sort of stagnating or even become worse.
All right.
And now with this team, like, they lost Yabzor and Kezu, and I think Kezu was, well, at least
Yeah, it
Yabzor
was
was probably.
very.
I think Yabzor
Yeah.
was at least the best player on that team after maybe, or maybe tied with Quaikva in terms of individual skill. So I think they lost a huge force of that team, and now they replaced
I
it
feel
with
like,
what, Honey?
Yeah.
So
I don't
just
feel
taking a
they
look
have-
at their. Yeah. No, go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Stephen.
I was just gonna say I don't feel they have any true star players where they could actually make a run. Like the most I'm
Yeah.
expecting from this stack is syndereN somehow somehow qualifies for TI again. That's the most I can expect from this. Like that's a specialty qualifying for TI somehow,
Yeah.
right? But
Um,
I'm not expecting much more.
Taking a look at their player roster, and the one thing that I'm asking myself is that how are they going to play the new map? So the new map is, if you take a look at all of the recent games, I mean it's been like almost 2 months with the new map. So this isn't prescriptive by any means, but one of the most effective ways to play the map is just to have really good early game rotations across the 4 bounty rune spots. And you take a look at Hani and syndereN, they're not the best at controlling the map. Part of what made Yapsor so good, and Kezu to a lesser extent, still good though in the old roster, was that they propped up the early game, But now that there's more emphasis on the early game, you have Era and Koifa on the same team, and you have Hani who's also taking up a lot of farm. I don't know.
See,
I
yeah,
don't know.
and this is pretty much what I had in mind as well. Like, Yapzor is such a strong, impactful support, and then you lose him, and then replace him with Hani, who's played support before, but he's also like, I think his most notable time in Dota was when he was playing a core position.
Yeah, mid lane.
Exactly. I mean, he has played support before. He's rotated with a no-tail that was a lot questionable, but
Yeah.
let's just say, even if he was really comfortable with playing support, he hasn't played competitive Dota in over a year. No, 2 years now. Wait, he quit after TI4, so he hasn't played Dota in like 2.5 years now, almost
It's like a
3 years.
dinosaur.
Yeah,
Someone that survived the Ice Age. Like,
exactly. And I've listened to him cast. I want to say it was Boston major qualifier games with like some of his
The EU
friends.
people.
Yeah, he was casting with some people. Yeah, from EU. They were like streaming. It was like five pros and then like a bunch of friends from pros, and then Hani was in there as well. And he asked so many basic questions because he hadn't followed like Dota, or like he hasn't caught up with like patches and that kind of stuff. And then recently he's like, why do people buy a blade mail so often? And then Note had to explain to him that blade mail was changed so that it doesn't like it goes through BKB again. And he's like, oh
Yeah.
right, now it makes sense that people buy a blade mail. And those kind of things added up together. I'm like, why do you trust in
Yeah.
Hani? Like, I do think that with time he's obviously going to get to a certain level again, but it
Oh,
feels like such a weird pickup at this point in time, and it makes me wonder if they maybe got caught off guard by the Yapster leaving the team. Like,
we just need somebody,
Yeah.
anybody.
exactly.
You're still alive. Just drag them off the street.
That's pretty much it, though, isn't it? I mean, I guess there's some sort of like synergy between him, Ira, and Trixie because they know
Yeah.
each other they've known each other for a while. He's also been a really good captain for Fnatic, or he's been a captain for Fnatic. I'm not sure if he's really been a good
Yeah.
captain for them, but so he has a lot of experience, and there's a lot of advantages to having somebody like Hani, but I think there's also a lot
Yeah.
of disadvantages. So I'm just very doubtful.
Yeah.
It sounds like that movie Encino Man. You know, with the person stuck in ice, the caveman stuck in ice, and you just chisel him out. Oh, here we have taught you fire, and then he's gonna contribute to the team. I don't know. I'm not sure about this team. Trixie as well. Trixie's another player that I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if this is gonna be a good environment for him. Like everything you said about Honey, also the same with Trixie, but I think he's also gonna get outclassed by all the other offlaners because in the last year and a half, is it the last year and a half? Just so many more offlaners are getting much attention in Dota, and so the offlaner impact is some of the highest it's been for the last like 3 patches. So
Definitely.
I hope
I
hope Trixie is up to the challenge.
I definitely think that is also a concern for them, but at the same time, I mean, unlike Honey, at least he still continued playing Dota. Also competitively, he played with Stark, so he played up until TI 5. Yeah, TI 5.
TI 5, yeah.
Semi-competitively, and at least from what he's shown so far, I don't think he's necessarily that much of a quote unquote burden. I don't think he's dragging them down or anything, but I do agree that it is. I don't know, this whole NIP team, it's cool that NIP as a brand is back in Dota. I like NIP as a brand just because, I don't know, it's just a cool brand. Has a lot of history, they have a lot of fans, but not a lot of hope in this squad. Not a lot of hope.
Yeah.
All
I can't
right,
expect hope.
let's switch to a team that I do have much more hope for, especially now.
Yay.
And I want to say it's kind of funny how when I wrote down the notes, I wrote it as Bone7 joins Cloud9 as coach. When it is actually NP that he's joining as coach for.
Yeah.
All right, Steven, I believe you have a few thoughts on this.
Bone7, aka Bang7, aka Boner Chan, aka like the greatest artist in the 20th century or whatever. The true artist where you can't understand what the fuck is going on, who can win you games instantly or lose you games instantly. This guy as coach is it's something else. I'll say this. As someone who watched all of that era of that C9 Eternal Envy, seeing Bone7, Palai AUI stack,
Yeah.
you could totally understand why this team was so beloved, even if you ignored all the like outside personality stuff that they had a bunch of interesting personalities on a team. Like we just looked at their games, there was never a game where you were like, this is what they're gonna do this time. No, it was never like that. It was either they went all the way in or all the way out or all the way to the side. You never knew what the fuck was going on. Like you couldn't the way you could describe their throws was like normally when you throw a game, it'd be like imagine the game is a football and you just throw it away to the other team and then they make a touchdown. And like in that team's case, was like they threw the football so hard it went all the way around the world, and they caught it in their own hands again somehow, and then they lost the ball. Like that's what makes this team so amazing. Is like you don't know what the fuck is gonna happen, and with Bone7 as captain, I mean not captain but as coach, like what kind of chaos is he gonna introduce into this team? That's what I want to know.
It's like a Looney Tunes skit, you know. It's Bugs Bunny torturing that opera singer for 20 minutes. One thing that I think my favorite Cloud9 game where nobody knew what was happening was, I don't remember if this was TI4. I think it is TI4. Eternal Envy and Bone7 decide to abandon the rest of their team while the entire, I forgot which team this was they were up against, basically took tier 2, tier 3, and the racks. They completely abandoned the rest of their team. And the moment their racks falls, that's when they decide to come in. And guess what? They actually do manage to wipe the entire team and then push away and then eventually win it somehow in like 50 minutes or something. Nobody knew what Envy was doing. He was on carry Doom at the time when Doom was also a good support hero and not... Yeah, he was a race car, unkillable carry Doom that was dying in the early game. So, I don't know. This to me, what I imagine is that, you know how when you play The Sims, and you have two Sims talking to each other, and the speech bubble comes out, and you have no idea what you don't know what they're talking about, but they understand each other? That's Bone7 and Eternal Envy. So, I'm interested to see exactly what happens to their team, because right now Team NP, I don't know if their issues. I don't know if it's a coaching thing that they need to fix. Do you think it is, Kim?
First of all, two very fitting analogies from you guys. Very, very beautiful. Second of all, Bone7 is a genius. Third, I'm not sure if it's coaching either. I do think it's nice to have him back in it, or I say back in a team, but I think Bone7 is like the key to unlock Envy. Like I think you know how you can't you know how you can't understand Envy, and a lot of people are like, give him subtitles, dude. And I think you have to look at it that way. Like his mind is like sealed off with like a bunch of like chains, and like you have AY that can like he actually. AY literally said
translators. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly, and I think Bone7 is like while AY is like the little translator for Eternal Envy. I think Bone7 is like the meta translator for Eternal Envy. He can actually make people understand what Envy is kind of like crazy ideas he has. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, you do have to give it to the team. When they were together, they came up with a lot of like really innovative stuff. They figured out that you could block a camp with a courier.
Yes.
They actively immediately upgraded a courier to just block camps. And when it didn't work out, they're like, can we remake? We didn't know that you can't upgrade the courier anymore, and we bought a courier now. Or I don't know, there was something like that, and they had to remake the game because they forgot that it got patched out or something like that. So it is, I don't know, this team is amazing, or this team was amazing, and
this team's still missing two key parts though. Okay, all right. Let's ignore Sing Sing because I don't think Sing Sing was that great. Eternal Envy made him look good.
I agree.
I don't think he was that great overall. Like he's very replaceable. Whereas I think Palai is not replaceable.
No.
That's what I was going to say. Palai is the original position 7 support. You know. So just going by your analogy. If Bone7 is the key to the madness that is Eternal Envy, and by the way, it's a Russell Crowe movie that we're talking about right now. You know that A Beautiful Mind, where he hallucinates an old guy that's talking to him and trying to make him understand the equations he's coming through with his head. That's Bone7, the imaginary old guy. So you need Palai because Palai is the only reason why they can take so much time to sift through the chaos in a game, while Palai is just please. Carrying the entire game on the weight of his shoulders just to make sure that the early game doesn't completely crush them. I don't know who that is on this team, on Team NP right now.
Yeah, like the traditional Dota strat 4 protect 1. Like when we go back to that Cloud9 version, it's actually one protect four, where like Pilot dies protecting the other four. He was like dying for their sins over and over again. He was literally Dota 2 Jesus for a while. It's like literally dying for their sins, and then eventually they would redeem him, and they'd come back at the very end and like be reborn, and then apocalypse would happen, and that's how they won games. That's what I'm thinking about that team.
Pretty much, actually. I recall people saying that they regarded Paladai at the time as one of the best supports in the world at the time. Like when they won MLG Columbus, wasn't it Envy that leaked like information where he said that both Kuroki and Papi wanted to poach Paladai after that tournament because he was so good. That was it. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And to be fair, he was.
Yeah, like he was like dragging, because what he was doing was he was dragging like the position 1 into like position 2 or position 3 gold by himself.
Yeah.
So you're sacrificing a 5 for 1. That's a huge trade. So I mean he's just doing this by himself. Like nobody can fucking stop him. So I could totally understand why they wanted him. Whereas
I think at the time too, like they were up against Team DK, right? And Team DK was just starting to hit that stride between MMY and Lanham. Yeah. Where they would go around as a 2-man duo. They were the original FY and Fenrir at the time, and they would just go around and assassinate people around the map so that Burning can have the space. And Pailai would go up against the two of them, and sometimes he'd get away with his life or something. So that was really impressive at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is a cool move. I do think that this is going to help NP a lot. I'm not sure if they necessarily needed a coach. I definitely do think that they needed something. If Bone 7
so chaotic, we don't even know.
We don't know if Bone 7 is really the answer, but for all we know, this is just going to make Team NP more entertaining.
PPD had something interesting to say. It was he basically said the problem with this particular lineup, the NP lineup, was that they were playing as a unit, but they didn't have that polarizing player, that star player that could like just drag them into instant victory sometimes. And, like,
right. Yeah.
You don't see Pally die here. There's no RTZ. There's no Sumail. There's no like QO. There's nobody quite like that. Like Eternal Envy can kind of do that in the very very end game sometimes, but he doesn't do it that often. So I'm guessing like if you get Bone 7 and he somehow like makes this team crazier than usual. Like, I guess it might help in the sense that, look, if NP doesn't know what they're doing, how is the other team going to know what they're doing, right? I mean, maybe that's the answer. Is they want to like increase like the amount of chaos that goes into a game. You know, the famous Eternal Envy chaos.
Yeah. To that PPD point though, I will say that I don't necessarily think that you necessarily need one of those polarizing players that will at some point just carry you to the game or to carry you to the victory at some point. If you look at OG, for example, I don't necessarily think that either Notel or Ana is really that person either.
But I think Jirax is.
Yeah,
true.
That is the thing.
True, Jirax. How could I forget about Jirax? No,
like I think that team is very similar to that team is like a bunch of solid players, but like Jirax basically controls the flow of the game by himself. Yeah. So it's it's a very different kind of carry. It's a very non-traditional carry where he's not he doesn't become like he's the most important piece of that puzzle, I think, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, actually, if you go by that logic, right? So what you can see from Dota right now is that you need like an I win button, right? Because a lot of teams right now, they have relatively equal baseline of power level between all of them, and so you need that when everything is 50-50, you need that I win button to drag you over the edge. And for EG, you have that in RTZ, you have that in Sumail. They have two, so that's why I think they're technically better than OG. And with OG, you have that with Jerax. And before, they use a similar equation with Miracle.
Yeah.
But with NP, I think they have an I win button. That I win button is Eternal Envy. So I think they just needed to be 50-50 with the other teams. But the thing is, they're so unstable that they're not 50-50.
I agree to an extent, but I think that I win button is stuck a lot of times. Like, it's just like...
Also,
Eternal Envy's I win buttons, like, it's much more crazy than other people's I win, like, conditions. Like, you think about it, like, all of Eternal Envy's great wins are all, like, super fucking crazy. I remember there was this one game, I think it might have been Navi or it might have been a Chinese team, or I forget. It was at one of the TIs also where like the entire team was like dying around him, and basically everybody had given up on the team. And then at some point he backdoors by himself and kills a Rax while they trade
yeah,
on
yeah.
tower, and then buys the Divine Rapier and wins the game. It's like, yeah, that's the I win button. But how many times is Eternal Enemy
Yeah.
gonna get that?
Also, yeah, that's also true. But maybe that's it, right? Maybe they need stability. You know, it's the brilliant artist
Oh.
who needs a support system. Otherwise, they don't.
I definitely think they need more stability, because if you look at the team as a whole, like I know that there's like this whole like throw stigma around them, but at the same time, it's not like when they throw, it's not just like, well, there have been obviously some really crazy throws where like, you know, like, oh, we're pushing without TP, so that kind of shit. But they often make a lot of like just casual mistakes as well, like in the landing stage. Oh, I just overextended and went to tier 2 tower. Oh, I guess I'm dead now. Like they have a lot of these. They have a lot of these like minor inconsistencies as well that cost them the game at some point as well. Because if they didn't have those inconsistencies, I think they would look much better. And this is not just Envy or AY. This I think this pretty much applies to everybody on that team. Maybe not one for, well, you know. Either way, I do think they need more consistency. But if either they go for more consistency or they go batshit crazy. And I guess they went both batshit crazy.
Yeah, Batshit Crazy is more fun than.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah, I mean, Envy did say he just wanted to make a team with people he wanted to play with. So
Which
mission accomplished.
Which I think is cool.
So what,
Mission fucking accomplished. Good on you, Envy. Good on
Alright.
you.
Which I guess leads us to the next Dota topic, or pretty much the last one as well, but the big one. So last weekend, we did have the big tournament in. Nope, this is not it. This is it. DotaPit. DotaPit happened this weekend. First question: did you guys watch it?
Yes, I did.
I watched parts of it. Like it was on at the same time as Sunday. At least was on the same time as CS:GO.
CS Sunday. We'll get back to it later. But yeah, DotaPit was an interesting tournament. They had a lot of issues on the first day. They had like major delays. I think at some point it was like 4 or 5 hour delay on the first day.
Yeah,
The first day.
The first day, yeah.
Yeah, because it starts at like 2 a.m. my time, and then I woke up like, oh wow, the second series hasn't started yet. What is this? Like it was like 7 hours later or some shit.
Pretty much. It was a rough day, honestly. If you wanted to watch. But it was still pretty good, and I think this is something. I mean, bearing in mind the issues they had on day 3 as well, I think the games, or the quality of the games, sort of like carried the tournament, because it was still a very enjoyable tournament to watch.
It was. It's a very insightful tournament. There were some elements. There were some elements that weren't as good a study, but overall, I think the results were something that you could get a lot of insight from in terms of the power levels of the teams so far. It was especially nice to see Team Faceless play against Virtus.pro, because I think that really exposed a lot of things between the two teams. So Virtus.pro was in a hot streak going into Boston, but I think this tournament sort of showed what are the problems with that team and what they can improve. So very good tournament. I really enjoyed it.
So EG won the tournament very convincingly, I think. It says 3-2, but I still think it was a convincing win, especially considering that they won 2-0 over OG just on the same day. Like basically they won 5-2 total.
Yeah.
But like you said, there's been a lot of like really good performances, and there's like a lot to take away for the future tournaments. One thing is Faceless, they are damn abusers. They keep abusing the whole the whole ancient pole with the Rubik and Pudge.
Fuck that thing, by the way.
If you happen to watch Dota these days, and if there's like a Rubik in the game, people will be doing it right now. Like I watched Starlight yesterday, and everybody kept doing it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Rubik, Pudge on Radiant. It's everyone's abusing it, and the thing with this tournament though is that they're either abusing that mechanic or they're just abusing Ember Spirit. Something needs to be done. Something
Oh
needs
yeah,
to be done about that.
Ember Spirit
Terrell.
had like a pretty ridiculously high win rate, but also Lundred. I think this was the tournament that gave Lundred a bit of a spotlight, because before this tournament, I think it was at what tournament happened before this? There was this other tournament where Wings tried to. Oh, ESL won Genting. Wings tried to do the Lundred, but it didn't work for them. And nobody else tried it, and now at this tournament, Arteezy is the one that has been spamming it, or not spamming it, but he's been using it a lot, and it's super effective. And now everybody here now keeps banning it or keeps playing it as well.
Yeah, I thought it was actually. I thought it wasn't. I thought even though like Wings lost that game, I thought he himself like Shadow was it?
Yeah, it was Shadow. It was Shadow.
Yeah,
Shadow.
It was Shadow.
I thought he actually played that pretty decent, despite like his team like dying everywhere. So I thought there was like some potential in it. So I'm not surprised like it got picked up by a bunch of really good ranked players, and now it's used by everybody.
Yeah, I agree, and it was a difficult. I actually was not too happy. Like I was happy that he did it because it was the first pro game where we had that launcher thing, but at the same time, I wasn't too happy the way they picked it because it was a really awful game in my opinion against for the Bear, and then he even had to build the Fusil Blade, which is something you don't want to do. But in general, still, it's I don't know. A lot of people are saying that it needs to be nerfed, and a lot of people are saying that Ember Spirit needs to be nerfed. I guess we'll see. I think if you're Ice Rock, you're still waiting for maybe more information because it's only quote unquote only been 2 LAN events. One had a lot of issues, and then I think you just want probably maybe you want to wait for DAC qualifiers to finish before you do some tweaks because I think the qualifiers. I mean, DAC is gonna have 4 regions, 5 regions, whatever. Qualifying, so I think that's like a good sample size for Ice Rock to really make a statement in terms of nerfs.
I don't necessarily think it's that unbeatable as well. So, I think it would be interesting if they do nerf it over something else, right? I definitely think something needs to be done about creep pulling before they even touch Lone Druid. So, although if anything, they probably should look at the range. Is probably the only thing. Like maybe take off like 50 or 25 range, and should be probably enough. Otherwise, it's a fine strategy. I much prefer it over some other cheese strategies of the past years.
Anyway, what do you guys think of OG just from this tournament? I mean, ignoring the other tournament results, obviously. So just OG in this tournament. Because when I saw OG play, at first I was like, all right, this is OG. But I think in this tournament it has become very apparent, and maybe this is just this tournament, maybe he just had a bad performance and just a bad weekend or whatever, but Ana was not good. Like, Sumail destroyed him in lane multiple times.
Ana's like a miracle level player. Like, I know they were like hoping he might be, but he's not.
Yeah.
Like, it's strange. Like, okay, so in the old OG, I think the 2 best players were actually Miracle and Crit.
Yes.
Like the combination of the two made them like even though Miracle's obviously like the superstar level player, Crit was the guy who was like helping him a lot or like creating a bunch of space for him. Whereas in this one we have like Jerax doing everything, and then like Ana can't capitalize on all the space that he's being given, and like he can't fight head to head with Sumail. So it's like there are more weaknesses in this OG lineup than there was in the previous.
I agree.
Even though I think Jerax is like a better player than Crit.
I agree, and this is
Definitely.
like it was like on Reddit, right? The whole highlight where Ana walks back in as Ember Spirit and gives away like a kill to Sumail, even though Sumail was like a who was it? I think it was even Jerax that was gonna get the kill for sure on Sumail, but then Ana walks back in and dies because of the laser. And I will say that Ember Spirit Tinker is an unfavorable matchup for the Ember Spirit, but still, it felt very reminiscent of TI5 when Sumail played against Shiki. Like, Sumail was so able to outplay him the entire time, no matter the matchup as well. I'm not gonna say that Ana is like on a Shiki level, because Ana has like, I think Ana's mid and late game is much stronger, and when you do give him enough time, he is gonna be like a really good carry as well. And his Ember Spirit was really strong, as well. Even against EG, it was really strong. But I think his laning stage is atrocious in comparison to other high level. Or in comparison to mid laners on other top tier teams. I think out of all the top tier teams, I think he's the weakest mid laner.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think EG did a good job. You could see it especially in that in the last day, the first series of the last day. they correctly identified that on OG you have two main pressure points. You have Jerax, who's overtaxed. He is super taxed because No Tail isn't the most dominating safe laner anyway. So he also has to pay attention to that lane. And at the same time, you have Ana, who has a great recovery rate. Like he's good at recovering, but the trade-off there is that if you give it to a team like EG, who has a carry in the mid lane, it's the recovery isn't. Yeah, it's not worth it. It's not worth the trade-off. You know, you're gonna give Sumail so much gold advantage that it doesn't matter if you get back. So I think just by seeing that, you can see that maybe the answer is Ana should just stick to a controlling type or a tempo type of a mid lane for him. Just because if his strength is that he can pull things back together in the mid game, then maybe just play around that. You know, instead of making sure that Jerax is also there at all times, because otherwise every other team is going to use that game as the blueprint to beat OG. So
maybe they should just clone Jerax, get 2 Jerax.
I mean, yes, but you know.
Question: Would you be satisfied with just 2 Jerax, or would you then say, let's just make a team of Jerax?
I don't look, man. You can only have so many fucking crazies in one team.
Right,
I think 2 is the max.
Also, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I will say
you can only have one full action Jesse is the thing too.
I will say though that I do think that, and maybe this is because I was so focused on like Ana not being good that I thought that Notel played a really good tournament actually. Like he actually played. I think this was one of his better performances as a carry. I mean, obviously, if you're OG and if you're Notel, I think he's done really well, and I don't think he has ever. But I don't think he's ever had those outstanding performances where he's like praise from everybody and he's like, oh yeah, this is like wow, Notel or whatever, right? I think the eyes have always been on other people, but I think that in this tournament especially, he did a really good job. Like there was this one game where he was, I want to say Sven or something, and he carried them back into the game because, well, again, Ana couldn't do it. It was a Terrorblade. I think it was Terrorblade. I'm not sure right now.
Probably not Sven. I mean, most people can play Sven.
No,
like it's hard to make a superstar performance on Sven. You know, it's like that hero. That hero like will always get you the same kind of performance.
Sure.
Like it's not that much like different, so it's got to be not Sven. Is my guess. Sorry, it's just like
no, you have a point. You do have a point.
Yeah. I agree though. It was a really good tournament for No Tail.
Yeah.
Fly kind of flew under the radar actually just because there was so much emphasis on shutting down Ana that you would have expected Fly to relieve the pressure as well, but I don't recall a lot of action from him, or at least a lot of highlights for him.
What's this?
One thing I will say, however, is that with OG, I think you get to see the mindset behind building the team as far as Fly's mentality goes. So Fly has always had this, ever since I think the first founding of OG, he's always had this persona that, he's a guy who forms a team with a specific sort of identity, and he clearly knows what the strengths and weaknesses are, and he's willing to work it out as a unit so that they experience success. And I think that's why you see Jerax there on the team, because of Ana. Because they know that Ana is not Sumail. And so they needed someone who is such a crazy support that they can prop him up.
I mean, they probably would have gotten Jerax anyway. Like,
yeah,
if you lose crit, I think if you're like a team like OG, you definitely want to go for like the best possible replacement ever. And with Jerax, I guess it depends on how you want to look at it. But with Jerax, you maybe even have somebody better than crit, or at least on an equal level. So, I don't necessarily. I mean, well, yeah, it works out in a way where he is able to sort of like elevate other people around him. But that's kind of like the point. Like you do want to have players that are not only really good, but that also make other people better, so that you as a team can be better together.
Well, yeah, but I think it answers a specific question, right? Or a specific. It plugs a specific hole. Like you do want to get that higher quality player, of course, but at the same time, it's like plugging. It's a secret problem, right? Yeah, they have the highest quality players, but it doesn't really plug the same questions. It doesn't answer the same questions on their team. Meanwhile, when you see Ana perform that way, oh, JRX makes so much more sense now. Other than it's not just they got him because he's the best. Obviously, you're gonna get the best. They got him because they recognize early on that if we had this sort of mid laner who's not Miracle, who needs attention, you want JRX because you want the team to focus on JRX instead.
Yeah.
So there you go.
True.
So,
Yeah.
what do you guys think of EG?
Ooh, EG was pretty strong in that event as well. I thought that I don't know. I think it was against OG in the upper bracket finals, so not the grand finals, but the one before. They had one of the most clinical finishes I've seen from EG, because when I look at the old EG when they had PPD, I think EG was one of the teams that always like out strategized others, but they didn't necessarily look like clinical to me. They wouldn't like. For example, OG at Boston, they were a really clinical team. I think in their group stages, they finished every game like under 40 minutes. Like either they would finish a game in 20 minutes or like 24, and then had one outlier with like 34 or whatever. They look really clinical. And EG is like a team that is good and has a lot of really good strategies, and they have depth, but they never look clinical to me. And I think this was the first time where they incredibly clinical. They finished off OG in like 20 minutes. That was insane.
Yeah. That was a stomp.
It was great.
It was great. It was. I think. I think this is a tournament where you can see the hand of fear into things, and just the general thing that you hear from PPD, where this iteration of EG is much more of a unit compared to the old one, and I think it's a lot to do with fear, because when you look at Arteezy in all of these games, he takes up for the same matchup, for example, like 2 games, right? Or best of 3. Game 1, he would take up all of the farm in that team. All of the kill priority would be given to him, and they would win. But sometimes he'd take up game 2, and he would have second or third in gold priority, in kill priority. And so he's able to fill that fear sort of slot in the team where he will just do whatever it takes. And he isn't like his stint in Secret, where it was always Arteezy has to keep farming, and they all lose to the detriment of the entire team. So I think this is the performance that showed a little bit more maturity on Arteezy side. So that's great. It's great. They can alternate. They have different tools now, so that's great.
Yeah, because that was the problem with the old EG. Like I felt was Sumail, and they couldn't get Sumail or Arteezy like the right amount of gold. So I guess with this version, they're getting them to work together better than they were in the other previous versions. I don't mean like team fights. I mean like sharing gold, sharing map, sharing like the plays, I guess. So I feel like this version is actually stronger, even though I think the previous version that had PPD was strategically better.
Yes,
kind of
I will
weird
agree.
way to say it.
I agree. And especially even in drafting, I think PPD's EG was stronger. If you look at just, I mean, I'm not saying that Crit or whoever's drafting right now is a bad drafter or anything, but I do think
I mean,
that
PPD's an all-time great drafter. It's
Yeah.
a difference.
exactly.
Yeah.
I think it's a bit funny though, or I wouldn't call it ironic, but I think it's a bit funny though that PPD in his reflections with Thorin, he said something along the lines of, "If I'd been given more time, I would have made Arteezy and Sumail work, but Arteezy chose to flee, basically." And now now they edged PPD out and basically solved the problem by themselves, sort of. So
We'll see. I mean,
we'll
always,
see.
like the problem with Arteezy is he can work for like periods of time, but how long has he been on EG this iteration? Not that I feel like it hasn't been that long.
Well, he joined after TI, right?
Yeah, so like maybe 4 months, maybe. Like if they're gonna crumble, it'll be like right before, like given his timings of like when the team crumbles around him, it might be in like 3 months like from now.
That's actually that's actually a good point. Like, does he how? And I guess this is like a question that you need to ask for every team, right? How is a team gonna overcome adversity? Like, how are they gonna overcome not being a good team anymore? Like, are they gonna solve the issue? Are they gonna work on it? Or again, like you said, technically, what he could do is just flee and he could just go to another team, because after Kiev, there's another period where you could swap teams.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's always the issue with teams. Like, maybe they did solve it. Part of it must have been solving it, but
Yeah.
how like the adversity part is always going to be the problem because like PBD
It's always
can
a real
work when things were shit, but we have yet to see this EG team go to shit yet, so we don't know if that'll work. If like Fear and Crit can make it work if this team goes to shit. You know,
True.
it's like that's always the question I have in the back of my mind for a bunch of these teams that are really good, and then when they hit the first snag, they just give up. Like OG is kind of an example of that. They lose TI, they're like, yeah, we need to kick everybody out. We need to kick 2 of you out. Like Moon, you need to get the fuck out.
Yeah.
It's like that's kind of the problem. Is like they can talk about all this friendship shit or whatever, but when it comes to like the hard, like when it comes to like the adversity part, like majority of teams are always just gonna go for the kick or somebody's gonna leave. That's my feeling about that.
In Dota especially, because there's no ramifications for doing it. There's no real backdraw because
it's so easy.
you can always just
So
reset and just go for. I guess we'll try next season, you know, or let's just give this one a try. And like you see with EG, pretty much again, like even if you do kick people, they will still come back to you if you want to, basically.
Yeah.
So there's no hard feelings ever, really. Like you can just kick AY twice and he'll probably join you a third time as well. So that's just, I don't know. It's obviously as a player as well, it doesn't make sense to hold like grudge and like, oh, I'm not gonna join you anymore because you kicked me a bunch of times, because obviously it's gonna hold your career back. But still, it feels a bit awkward just that teams are basically encouraged at this point to disband every now and then when they want to, when they just don't want to work anymore.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a problem with it, but like, you're not. And the thing is, like, well, if you go to the reverse case where like teams stick together, there's no guarantee that team will work. Like we see in Alliance, that team stuck together like 1.5 years too long. Like, whereas Wings, like, they stuck together way longer than they should have, but they eventually did make it work. So it's very iffy. Like there's no set way to get to the win. Right?
Exactly.
So
there's no recipe for success really, and even with Wings now, are they gonna come back, or are they gonna bounce back, or are they gonna crumble like any other team that has crumbled before? You know, that has stayed together for so long. Same with Adfinim. Everybody's riding the Adfinim hype train. Oh, they're like such a cool team. They placed second in Boston Major, but for all we know, they did have a really, I wouldn't call it an easy bracket, because again they beat Newbie, for example, which is a really strong team. But for all we know, Adfinim is not gonna have any noticeable finishes anymore at any LAN event, and they're gonna disband or anything. So it is difficult really to find out what's the recipe for yourself. But I do think, or I'm not the biggest fan of teams and players that do run away at the first sign of adversity.
Yeah. I think there's something to be said about a team striving for consistency. And so if you're the kind of team that sort of packs it up and moves out, ships out after one failed LAN, I think that really hurts any legitimate talk of how good you are. So I think for this Evil Geniuses team, even if they bomb out of DAC, are they in DAC? No, OG, only OG.
No,
right?
EG is invited as well.
EG's in there actually.
Yeah, EG
is in there.
EG and OG were both invited.
Right. So after Kiev, right?
No,
Yeah.
So
DAC is before Kiev, or what?
no. What I mean is that after Kiev is the first time that Sirs will reset. So yeah, I hope they stick together, because I really want to see this particular configuration go for a TI, a road to TI.
Mhm.
And if they don't, I don't know if there's much to talk about this team right now, because as good as DotaPit was, I mean, it's one LAN. So
Yeah. Oh, speaking of failure, what do you guys think of Virtus Pro?
They
I saw them. I thought they were really good. I really did pick them to win Boston, but I feel like they're too predictable now. Like people have figured out how to beat them, and like they haven't adapted or realized it yet.
See, this is the thing, and I want to say this happened before, but I'm trying to figure out which team it was. But you know how every pro is like saying, "Whoa, you know what? They're like the best team," and that kind of stuff, and then they just fail because, I mean, I think a lot of times when you exactly, a lot of times when you see pros talk about other teams, they talk a lot about their experiences from scrimming against those teams, and everybody was like praising VP into the sky, and everybody keeps praising like, "Oh yeah, VP had like a better bracket. For all we know, they like won the major or whatnot." Like, maybe, but at the same time, we don't know because the only evidence we have right now is that VP keeps bombing out these events,
Yeah.
and
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm trying to let me.
like in the individual games, like I like their late game, but like I haven't really. And besides like I think they have like one really good event, but besides that, I haven't seen anything that makes me think they can do this consistently. Like they can consistently be a championship contending team. Like
Yeah, and the way they lost to OG as well was it wasn't even. I mean, the first game was kind of convincing. It went on for like, let me just quickly check. Yeah, it went on for like 60 minutes. But the second game, they got basically stomped in like 30 minutes. And to me, Virtus Pro is just super inconsistent as well. Like sometimes, like you said, sometimes they'll have like really great performances where they will stomp the opponents. But even against Elements Pro Gaming, and keep in mind, Elements Pro Gaming is a tier 2 team in every way they can look at it. They sort of struggled a little bit in the second game. I mean, obviously the first game they stomped Elements, but in the second game they struggled.
yeah.
That's my problem with that. That's my problem with Actually, maybe this is also a problem that's brought about by the single elimination format in
Boston.
at the last major at Boston, because it sort of skews your perception of how good the team really is, just because the format it's not that big a difference in terms of percentages of figuring out how good everyone is, but it does have a difference. And one thing that Stephen said that I want to touch back on is consistency is probably the truest measure of actual skill, because there's a lot of randomness everywhere. So having a consistent metric to go by is really, really underrated in Dota. So people would usually just go with the hype teams. Now with Virtus Pro, I do think their performances pre-Boston Major, what LAN was that? Summit? Was it Summit?
Yeah, Summit.
Yes.
Yeah, so Summit and Boston, I think there was a bit of hype there. But when you look at the games, in Boston, you sort of started to see the problem with their game is that in the mid game, their decision making is all over the place. They're taking fights thinking it's still the early game. Like they're not realizing where the waves are, where the gold is going around the map. And so you have that game against, I want to say Evil Geniuses game 1, where you had no one on sniper, was really far ahead. Yeah, this was the Blade Mail game.
All right.
We're not even talking about the Blade Mail activation here. We're talking about somewhere in the 30-minute mark. I want to say they go for there was an engagement in the Radiant bottom side jungle. They two people on EG jump a support. I think it was Solo, and immediately Solo breaks the smoke of EG, so it reveals 5 players. But then no one Hurricane pikes into it anyway, and so they lose the biggest gold they have. They lose a streak off of no one, and because of that, it just helped them climb back eventually into the Blade Mail finish, right? Mm-hmm. And that's also what happened to them against Elements Pro Gaming. They kept taking like unnecessary fights in the mid game. They kept giving gold for free, and so I don't know. I don't know how you could call a team that keeps doing that, as one of the best, because that's kind of a dire mistake to make,
Yeah, and touch on a point, like the thing about double elim versus single elim is you just need to think about old EG. There's a reason like these guys always won through losers, man. Like if we changed all of history so it was only single elim, EG would be lauded as one of the worst teams of all time. But now because we have double elim, we know that they are legitimately one of the greatest teams, or like greatest combination of like the iterations of them are all really great because they always knew how to adapt and figure out how to win through these longer double elim formats.
No.
Yeah,
this
I definitely agree.
This is sort of a side point, but speaking of formats, DotaPit's format was, well, not the format itself, but the way they structured it was awful. Because on the last day they had 4 best of ones or something.
Best of one.
Was it 4 best of one?
Losers bracket. Yep, all the way to the losers bracket final.
Yes, they had 4 best.
Great idea.
4 best of ones, a best of 3, and a best of 5 scheduled for the last day. I mean, even without the delays caused by the European server outage, that would have gone until midnight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Obviously, they
Great
got
job,
a bit. They got sort of unlucky that the best of 5 finals went to all 5 games. But if you schedule best of 5 finals, you better prepare for all the 5 games to happen, right?
that's fucking insane, actually. Because I remember, like, it started 6 hours before
ELeague.
ELeague, and then it ended 2 hours after ELeague
Yes.
ended. It's like,
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
fucking
Yeah.
insane.
Yes, that was.
Yeah.
And that game 3 happened around. Oh no, game 2 happened around this time, my time. So that's 2 a.m. in the morning.
Oh,
I remember
wow.
falling asleep. Yeah, I remember falling asleep right, in the middle of game 2. I woke up at like 8 a.m. and it's still game 3. And I was like, did I go through a time tunnel? Am I a time lord? I don't know what happened.
Yes.
Yeah,
I,
it's like,
I had
so-
to message. Yeah, I had to message Knox on Twitter. I think, and just asking him what the hell is happening. I feel like I time traveled.
One last team I want to look at, and I'm not sure if you guys watched it, but Invictus Gaming.
I saw their early games versus OG. I was actually pretty impressed overall. Like, I wasn't expecting them to put that much up that much of a fight, considering they were playing against OG.
I think that, and I think this is their first LAN actually as a team, or at least first international LAN. But I think this is like a team to look out for. They also qualified for DAC, so we'll see them there. But IG is a really good team, I think. I mean, on home soil, like in Chinese tournaments, they've already like proved that they're one of the better Chinese teams. Maybe not necessarily on a level as Newbie, but they're still one of the better ones. And considering that Wings has sort of like gotten pretty weak since TI, I think, or gotten progressively weaker since TI, I think IG might actually be one of the top teams in China right now. And like I said, I think especially against OG, they showed that this is like a team to look out for. They also beat Secret, which I think Secret was also a really strong team at the event, I think. Was actually a bit unfortunate for Secret that they met both evil geniuses and then the, in my opinion, really strong IG. Because I think if Secret had a better draw, they might have even at least made like top 4 or something, or maybe even top 3. But I don't know. I think IG is a team to look out for. And you guys, Steven, I know you saw my tweet. Like, I think that I'm so happy that IG chose to go for a team that is not like filled
The
with,
usual combat.
exactly, like the usual. Oh, we're gonna go with like all these stars, all these known names. Like CDEC, for example. CDEC keeps adding like these sort of like quote unquote failed pros. Like they have Inflame, they had Rabbit for some time, and those people. No, IG is literally going for semi unknown people with Burning and then Q, obviously the most known ones, but the rest.
Like even Q is technically newer, but like it's mostly the only.
But he has notoriety.
Yeah, but like, the only old legend they truly have is Burning, and like I think that's enough because I think you just. The thing about these types of teams, like when you're comparing the new stacks to old stacks or like combination stacks, is the reason I think combination stacks feel like they work a bit better is because you get the experience from the old guys, and then like the much better talent, and then like the old guys can teach the younger rookies how to deal with pressure or like a specific ways they can play to fit around the team better, whereas like new guys don't have that kind of experience yet and haven't built it up yet. That's actually kind of why I think newbie is failing, like not failing, like not as in like they're not winning the international events, as they kind of lack that, like they kind of lack that like legendary experience kind of leader, or not even like captain figure. Like he'll get you to calm down. He'll tell you how to deal with the pressure, that kind of thing. Like all they have is like faith.
Yeah.
Or they'll tell you to cut your hand. Like how? I just want to howl back, man.
How? Yeah, I guess how could be that guy. Like, get it together, guys. I don't care if we have to punch each other. We'll do it.
That sounds like something Hao would say. Yeah, I think with IG, another thing that's interesting to look out for them is just the combination between OP, their mid laner, and Q, because So Q again is one of the newer guys, but he's already shown that he's very creative when it comes to roaming and pulling timings. And I think it was PPD. I think in 2015 who said like this Q guy is a genius. Like, because the way he would time his pulls and his rotations wouldn't really fit like traditional, Western team sort of conceptions. Like, oh, level 2 Lion, oh, he's gonna rotate now, or he's gonna start pulling. No, he sometimes he goes a bit earlier, like a step earlier, and then he'd come out. And then when you look at OP, I like that OP can spam the OP heroes really well. Like OP he has a great Ember Spirit and he has a great Queen of Pain, and it takes up so much pressure away from Burning. Because I want to see Burning just farm, That's
the classic
He
Burning
tried-
style.
yeah, I want to see that.
And-
I want to see that.
And this is where I'm gonna call out Nahaz. I'm gonna do it if he even watches it. I don't know. Watches this, but he made a tweet, and I will say that obviously. Well, I'll go into that later. But he made a tweet about how IG is playing around Burning, and maybe they did that more so than maybe I don't know. I watched all of the games at this point now. I didn't watch all of them at the time when he made the tweet, but I don't think that they play around Burning whatsoever. If you watch the games, from my perspective at least, they play so much around OP. They make sure that he gets a good lane. Not that he necessarily needs the help, but there's a lot of pressure usually around the mid lane, and they make sure that he gets a lot of help. They will apply a lot of pressure together with XXS as well. Is that his name? XXS?
Yeah. The offlaner, right?
Exactly. He's like I don't know. To me, this team is a lot. It's very reminiscent of EG with Fear in regards to how they will sort of like move around the map. They will have like a very active offlaner that is going to make a lot of space together with the support, and they have the mid laner that needs a lot of attention, and then they have that carry who's just he's just farming away, and then he's just going to join the fight at some point.
Carry.
Yeah, he's just going to
obviously.
And I know Noxtel, for example, pulled out the stat like, oh yeah, but he's been playing like so much Lifestealer and traditionally Lifestealer, but no. Lifestealer is just the hero in China right now that everybody likes to pick. I think I went through all the stats. If you look at every Chinese tournament, every Chinese qualifier right now, Lifestealer is the most picked carry above Luna in every Chinese tournament right now. Like if you look at even if you look at the in-houses, even if you look at the in-house leagues, Lifestealer is just the most picked hero right now, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're playing for Protect 1 and you're just gonna rally around the Lifestealer. No, it just means that Lifestealer is really good because all the heroes right now that are popular in both the offlane and the mid lane are excellent in Fest.
They're good.
Yeah, they're good, and they're excellent in Fest combos. Like you have the Slaughter, you have the Centaur, you have the Queen of Pain, Ember Spirit. You have so many variations for Infest bombs. Lifestealer is just such a good hero right now. Yeah, just a rant.
Yeah,
No,
I never really considered Burning like the superstar of the team. Even though I haven't watched that many, I thought OP was better.
Yeah,
I thought OP was like the one dictating IG's pace.
Yeah, I'll agree there too. Like I think I remember this now. We talked a little bit about this during that time when the tweet you mentioned.
Oh yeah.
I think that when you look at the games, the entire point that Burning is playing Lifestealer so that you can leave him alone.
Exactly.
Right, because they do, and you look at a lot of Q's rotations. They do tend to gravitate around controlling the middle shrines, the two middle shrines opposite each other between the Dire and the Radiant. So, yeah, I will agree there. I think now that you mention it, it brings up an old chestnut. Like, how do you beat a team whose worst player is Burning? So, that might be IG's future. Yeah, just classic DK all over again.
But yeah, I think IG is a team to look out for like DAC in the coming months.
So what do you guys think of Digital Chaos?
Oh,
I would say they had like a difficult. I mean, at some point everybody has a difficult draw because it's really just a stacked tournament, right? To a certain.
I mean,
degree.
all right. Think about it this way: like, what better team can they face in the first best of 3 besides Secret? Like, EG would screw them, OG would screw them.
Right.
Maybe VP.
I think they would have had a better shot against VP.
Yeah, maybe they could be VP. I'm not sure if they could beat IG, actually. I don't think they could, given... Maybe they could. It's like more 50-50, and then like Elements, obviously they could beat them.
And Faceless proved that Faceless could beat them, so...
Faceless already proved they could beat them. Like, maybe it'd be a bit harder in the best of 3. Like, but this is pretty surprising either way, given that they just won. I'm pretty sure they just won a tournament, right?
They just won ESL one Genting. Yeah.
Yeah, they just
Yeah.
won Genting, and then they
Yeah.
bomb out
Their
here.
first land win. Yeah, so
No,
their first land win.
It's
Is it because
Yeah.
like there's no more vengeance to be had? Like we did it, guys, and there's no more revenge left for Misery to captain.
I don't know if it's the fire. I don't know if it's a question of the fire. I mean, so if I remember correctly, Resolution was also away for a short period because he was doing WSG. Am I
right after
right?
DotaPit, he immediately after Genting, he immediately flew out to WSG to play.
Okay.
Right. So after Genting, he immediately flew out for WSG and then went back and then had to play for DAC. So that's probably going to contribute to the team. And at the same time, they did face Faceless, and Faceless is just spamming cheese strategies all day. So I don't know. I'm not ready. I mean,
Yeah, not ready
if
to
you're
give up.
not. Yeah, true. I mean, if you're not, you're not trying, right? If you're not doing that.
I definitely will say that the loss against Faceless can definitely be attributed to the fact that Faceless caught a lot of teams off guard here with this pull. I mean, you obviously did see it. They did use it before against EG, but it was with a Pudge, and then suddenly they're just like, oh, you know what? We can do this with Rubik as well, and so I definitely think that this can. I wouldn't use it necessarily as an excuse to say, all right, DC only lost to Faceless because of the pull.
Right.
But I
And
think
contributed.
yeah, but I definitely think that there's a lot of factors there.
Yeah, but the pool is a gimmick, so I guess in that case, in that kind of sense, like they're not gonna fall for that twice. They're gonna figure out a plan.
Exactly,
for that. So
but that's why it was like a best of one, right? So if you do it successfully once, you already won, basically.
Yeah. All right. I think the only team left is Secret. What do you guys think?
Pretty much Secret, which I guess we sort of. I sort of talked about them already. I do think that they're like a really good team, actually. If you look at Kezu, for example, which I found really interesting, is that he finally plays heroes that are sort of like outside of his comfort zone, or even better, he has expanded his comfort zone. When you looked at him in Escape, for example, he played like the same sort of like 4 to 5 heroes, and now suddenly he's capable of playing heroes like what did he play? Legion Commander, for example. Legion Commander, he played, I want to say, an Omni Knight at some point as well.
Is that Kezu or is that Puppy? Because I know Puppy likes to like force his players to expand their pools.
I definitely think it's Puppy's influence or impact, but that's kind of the thing, right? That's nothing that, for example, like with Escape, syndereN didn't do that for him. So I think this is really good for Kezu. He's not necessarily good on those heroes just yet, but he's gonna get there. I think he just keeps steadily improving. Like every time I see him, I think to myself, he's not a top tier offlaner, but he keeps getting better.
Yeah, man. All right.
I think one thing that I would say about Secret is that I think they're doing some good headway. Just talking about Kezu and how they're unlocking more heroes for him, but I think they need to put some attention on MP, because MP, he was already overshadowed and a bit limited in his roles and in his hero pool when he was with MVP, just because so much of the attention was either on Forev or on QO. But just taking a look at his performances, they were fine. He had a good Ember Spirit game, he had a good Phantom Assassin game, but his Lifestealer, come on. His Luna,
and I still think that MP had a lot of really questionable plays in the tournament. What was it?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it was his Luna actually against EG.
I feel like MP should have never. I don't know how you guys feel. I feel like MP should have never left the MVP roster, not because like of money or anything, just because I think his like play style fit them better.
Yeah,
probably did, but at the same time, and I guess this
was imploding.
Yeah,
they were imploding anyway. But
MVP was going to disband anyway, so I guess he had to leave at some point. But I do agree that I probably think he would have fit better into that team. But I mean, the Secret is sort of still making it work, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean they're making it work. But I get a feeling he'd be better on like a face rush kind of team, like one of those teams.
Yeah,
like maybe a CIS team, like all they do is dive. One of those.
Yeah. I agree, because I don't think that MP is like for me, MP is not like an exceptional carry when it comes to relying on that one person to actually carry you at the end of the day. Like if you force or if you focus all your attention Like if you have a lineup that relies on like that one Terrorblade to just roll over the enemy in the end of the game, I wouldn't want that to be MP. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
Mhm.
His macro isn't, it's not the best. It's not the best. He's really good when he's called to do that early team fight sort of thing, but the problem there is that it's kind of like playing an aggro deck in like Hearthstone or in Magic. If you nail the early game right, there's not a lot of decision paths left for the enemy, but if you don't, well, now you're completely super behind. And I think which Luna game was that? But he had one Luna game where he tried to go for the lane kills over and over again, and the offlaner would survive at like less than 100 HP, and then at the end of the game he had nothing. He had a Dragon Lance, and then he got rolled over. So
Might have been against DC, I think.
Yeah,
I think
But
it might have been. It might have been.
But to be
DC
fair,
game,
I think it was also against a Centaur, and the Centaur is like a, I don't know. I mean, obviously, yeah. Why would you even try it? Because it's a Centaur. Right?
Exactly.
So,
You shouldn't try, right? You should just go for the macro game. But I think it's that. So hopefully they put some more attention to him, and if they do, I think he can. I think it's a really good. I was against Sand King, I think. Oh no, I was against Centaur. It was game 2.
Yeah, Centaur.
all right.
So I hope they put some more attention to him.
I think we're pretty much done with our Dota 2 coverage for this week. Not much else happened outside of DotaPit. Teams have been, or league. I mean, just a lot of like qualifier games, but that's pretty boring.
Yeah.
So let's go to CS:GO, and I think we should just right away start with ELeague because the other topics are like nice, but they're like, I mean, Astralis gets an Audi sponsor, which I think is pretty cool. Like Astralis sponsored by Audi, I think that's pretty cool. Especially as a German, I think it's pretty cool. But
Yeah, it's pretty good.
yeah.
It is.
But it's just one of those things where, yay, we're getting cool sponsors now. Adidas, for example, for North as well. We're getting cool sponsors now, so hopefully we can see more of these headlines in the future. But let's focus on ELeague first. Do we want to just focus on? Do we just want to start with the teams that made it to the playoffs, or do we want to?
Sure.
Or do we want to roll it out from the beginning?
You guys watch the games?
I watched pretty much everything.
Okay.
I say pretty much everything.
watched
I missed a few rounds on day one because I was asleep, but I'll say pretty much watched everything.
All right.
I watch mostly VODs because again they're
All right,
The
yeah,
time
it's
zones.
awful for your time zone, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, the 8 teams that made it to the playoffs are Navi versus. I mean, we can go by the matchups as well already.
Yeah, we
Navi,
can go.
Navi Astralis, Fnatic Gambit, Virtus.pro North, and FaZe and SK.
Okay.
All right, Steven, since you're our CS:GO expert here, first of all, what do you think about the group stage? Do you think it was really enjoyable to watch in comparison to other majors? Do you think it was? What do you think of the format as well?
Okay, I like the format because what's happening is because it's a best of one, like it amps up the pressure a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a fundamental difference between best of one and best of 3 in all games, but I guess it's exacerbated in CS:GO because of the 7 map pool. Where the fact is, like most teams map pools don't go that deep, so a better team will usually have like always have like a kind of a guaranteed win, at least of one of the best of 3 games, so they can and then because of that, and like the other 2 games, they have a either 50-50 chance or higher than 50 chance, in which case they end up winning anyway. Whereas in this best of 1 game, because of the way like vetoes work, like you always even out on like the on the map where both teams are like kind of okay-ish on usually. So you get a bunch of these like very close, very very tight games.
Unless you have really stupid vetoes.
Yeah, unless you have stupid vetoes, but that's their own fault.
Yeah.
And then the only problem I can see with this is like Valve still refuses to do a proper seeding, and the other problem is like the map randomizer. Like they still want to use a map randomizer, which I think is stupid, but whatever. Like everybody else is probably trying to convince them out of it, and they still want to do it. Not much I can do about it.
Yeah, but I agree with your assessment, basically, with everything that you said. I do think that, like, Swiss is a really... I mean, we talked about this last week already, but Swiss is 1,000 times better than the GSL format they've used so far. Mostly because you don't suddenly just become legend by winning 2 best of ones, and you don't get eliminated by just losing against two teams.
So it's-
Yeah. Well, no,
Yeah.
no, you never lost against.
one best of one,
yeah,
one best of three.
Exactly. But still, I
Yeah.
think 3 best of 1s is better, or having to lose 3 best of 1s is better than losing a best of 1 and a best of 3 because,
Yeah.
it just, I don't know, it just gives you more chance.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I also
And just a thought.
yeah,
go
sorry.
ahead.
I also, and I know that Thorin made a point that there's like counter arguments against this, and I definitely do see them. But I do think it's a good idea to have individual days for the rounds, because I think that in a best, like I hate it, for example, in Dota as well, when a team can get eliminated within a day. Obviously, it doesn't really. I guess it's not really possible in a Swiss format because you probably play more matches than
Yeah.
than
You have to.
possible
You have
in
to
day.
play
Exactly.
matches.
But still, I do think that it's, especially, I mean, we've seen a lot of like really heartbreaking defeats in overtime, for example, right? Imagine after that you just get like 2 hours of pause and you have to play in the next game. I think that's obviously, as a top team, you need to overcome adversity, and you need to get over it. You need to get over yourself. But I do think it's a nice thing to have, like,
Yeah, you
just
don't need to kick them when they're down.
exactly.
Yeah. I was gonna add the one thing I enjoy about Swiss is that there's this big point every tournament about how I think Astralis is the team. They do super well in the group stages, but then it's not a barometer of how well they'll do in playoffs, because every other tournament they've gone to playoffs for, after having a dominant group stage, they would exit early in the playoff stage. So Swiss, I think, is a better judge of that, just because they play a lot more games, and it's a lot closer in terms of seeing the consistency of their actions.
Yeah.
But then again, it's still Astralis, so I don't know how good it is. All I know is that I enjoyed it, and I can see the merit, the benefit of having Swiss for most things going
All right.
forward.
So
I would want Swiss for Dota. Jesus.
yeah, I was about to ask, would you want a Swiss format for a Dota major?
See,
Like
that's
Yes.
I heard the Dota TI stay the same, but I think a Dota major could use this.
See, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sure if you've seen it on Twitter, but a lot of like pros have already said on Twitter, like, oh yeah, I would totally love like a tournament in Dota with like Swiss format. But at the same time, Swiss would only really work with best of 1s, right? You couldn't
Yeah,
really feasibly do best of 3
Yeah.
Swiss because it would take up too much time, unless you would do like multiple streams, for example. And
Yeah, so
and I think if you ask pros the question, what would you prefer? We do classic GSL groups with best of 3s, or do we do best of 1 Swiss? I think they will always go for the best of 3 format. Like no matter
Yeah.
how bad, like, how comparatively bad the format is in comparison to Swiss, as long as it's best of 3, it's probably almost gonna be better than Swiss best of 1.
yeah, it's probably
I
because of
believe
the
so.
game works. Like you can cheese
Yeah.
you can cheese way harder in Dota 2 than you can in CS:GO.
Exactly, and that's
Yeah.
that's the thing.
And
Like, you don't
They're
want,
side switching too in CS:GO.
Yeah,
yeah,
I can switch sides, and like even if you like bust out like a super cheesy strat, that's only gonna last for like 2 or 3 rounds at most.
exactly.
Maybe even just
Right.
one round.
And in
That's
Dota,
like Dota's game.
giving a one team first pick or whatever, like side pick or whatever, that gives them such a huge advantage. CDEC won
It does.
all of their team at TI5 because they played Dire, right? Because they
Yeah.
always, when they could choose, they would always choose Dire. Imagine, and that's part of the reason why EG won against them as well, because they finally took away Dire from CDEC. Obviously, a lot of is also attributed to the whole techies thing and whatnot, and cheeky and whatnot. But taking away Dire from CDEC made them lose, and that's the thing. If you have a best of 1, you don't have that variety. So I think
Right.
I would love to see some third-party tournament do Swiss, because I definitely think
Yeah.
we need more different formats, because Dota's pretty boring in terms of tournament formats right now. We have double limb or single limb. That's pretty much the only options we have.
Yeah.
Actually, MDL had the bubble race thing, which I think was also pretty interesting, but it's also, you also get kind of like flashbacks from TI4, so you don't really like it.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say. Like, I would totally want to have a Swiss format, but for everything up to a major, but never a TI.
All right.
Like for a TI, I would like the BO3 to BO5, and I think that's just for the way Dota works. I think that's the best sort of thing. But so going back to CS:GO, so yeah, that's Swiss format, great viewing,
All right. Actually, I think what we could do is when we talk about this, talk about the first matchups because we kind of talked about this last week already. About the first matchups, didn't we? Did we? Yeah, we had we had the matchups already, and I remember that one of the things that we talked about was how is Optic going to do against Virtus Pro? Because I remember, Steven, I think you said it that you weren't sure about Optic in regards to how to rank them, really, I guess.
Yeah.
And, well, I guess we have our answer now. They're not a legend team.
Not
that's
a
for sure.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, like, two of their losses were against really fucking tough teams.
Yeah.
Like, I can't really blame them that much. Like, Cobblestone they lost to Virtus Pro. Train they lost to Astralis. Like, even though they bombed out here, like, their losses were much harder than like a bunch of the other teams who also lost. So I mean, the only other team that got screwed over that kind of like that had that hard of a path was maybe G2. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, look at Flipside. They lost against FaZe Liquid. I mean, and obviously then Optic. So FaZe, like Flipside definitely lost it on their own. But I do agree with that. Optic had just a really rough draw. Even Godsend to a degree. I mean, I think Godsend surprised everybody at this event, in my opinion. Like the way they suddenly started playing, especially Flusha and JW. Even on that last map versus who was it? North, JW and Flusha. They played out of their minds. That was pretty close. They could have. I think it was a toss up at the end. Like they could have made it.
Yeah, if Snyder turned around and shot something,
that's
a completely different story we'd be looking at.
That needed to be punished so badly, honestly. Did you see that North already made T-shirts about this?
Of course, they've already made T-shirts, man. Yeah. It's disgusting. It's filthy.
It is filthy.
Like I think a bunch of pros are like, yeah, that was a great play. I'd fucking kill him if he was on my team, though. Fucking kill him. Like, I mean, I agree with them.
Did you see Cajun B in that clip where Config is laughing? Cajun B is mad as hell. Yeah. He looks at him. He's like, obviously, I don't know what he said, but I think he wants to rip his head off.
Something like, "You crazy asshole," or "I can't believe you fucking did that. I told you not to do that."
Yeah.
Could have been any of those. Like, oh my fucking god.
But yeah, coming back to the first round matchups, was there any other first round matchup that surprised you outside of maybe like North Gambit?
First round matchups. Let's see.
Because I think North Gambit was the other.
Yeah.
I think that was the first sort of like.
I was actually surprised by. I was surprised by a few of them. Gambit North. Like it surprised me.
I think
North Gambit. Yeah.
Like in the first Gambit North, because the thing about Gambit North was like we didn't like Gambit. They won a tournament, but it was against much weaker competition. So it was hard. It was hard to say exactly how well they do, and I thought they showed a lot of strength as a unit, tactically, and they had some really solid players, and they actually look really good. Like I'm still missing like pieces of the puzzle. Like how would they do in a best of 3, or how would they do against like a slightly less nervous version, like a more experienced like tier 1 team, like I'm thinking of Navi or VP or something.
Right.
But I think they look legit good. Like I think they could easily go to like the top of the tier 2 and maybe threaten tier 1 eventually.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was like a really pleasant surprise because I know Zeus is a legend and like he kind of proved it here. Like he's a legendary in-game leader. And the only other thing that surprised me was SK, I guess, because they didn't look that integrated when they went to ECS, but they look like a real unit here, even though like Fox is like not that great and he's kind of like ruining Fallen's game a bit. They look like a real unit. Like they can do some damage.
The two comebacks that they had was against who was it against? I don't remember now. One was against Astralis. I forgot the other one. Was it against Hellraisers? Or was it against?
No, it was against FaZe.
No,
it was against FaZe.
FaZe, yeah.
That was.
I know the Hellraisers game was a stomp.
Yeah, Hellraisers game was a stomp.
That was impressive. That was really impressive.
Like
the score.
They've actually proved that random bullshit line most people use, like you never give up till the very end. No, they actually don't give up till the very end.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I was actually pretty impressed. Like, the previous version of that had like three great players, like starish players, where like you have
Right.
Coldzera, and then either Fallen for FNX can join him, and then you have Taco as a support player who could also join everyone, but just like much less consistently than the other three. Whereas this version, you have Coldzera, and then you might have Fur, but then like the other three play such a strong, like the entire team plays such a strong unit, such a strong unit mentality, and like they don't give up ever. Like they don't ever mentally give up out of a game. That I think every game they play, every game they play, except maybe against Navi or Astralis, is going to be very, very tight. Like they're not gonna. You're gonna have to like beat them like 16-14, 16-13, 16-10. Like a bunch of these hard. Even if you're like a technically better team, you're gonna have a hard. Or I guess even if you're a team with a much more firepower, you're gonna have to fight them to like the very end, because I don't think SK is gonna like give you a round. They're gonna try to make you work for every single round.
Do you think that maybe they have the, well, maybe quote unquote easier side of the bracket, because technically they face, they face FaZe, right, in the first round. Which...
Actually, I think they have the I think their two hardest opponents would have been Navi and Astralis.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, they like, it's kind of weird because I think North is still a bit unquantifiable in terms of how well they do deal with pressure, because like they crumbled in the first two games, I remember, and then they like kind of forged their way back out of hell. So I'm not exactly sure about them. And then VP is VP. Like you don't know what version is going to come out. Like even the games they won, like a lot of them had like miracle plays, which I guess you can kind of expect from VP. But basically, I think SK have like the best bracket possible to get to the finals. But I don't think they can beat anybody they meet on the other side, because I'm assuming it's Navi or Astralis.
All right.
Like, but I even if they meet like VP or North, I'd still favor VP or North over them anyway. But like, I'm just
they
a better
probably
chance.
They have really good chances. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, and not even like FaZe is that clear cut, because like I said, it took overtime to beat out FaZe, even though FaZe was like playing better overall in that game.
And I think FaZe played a lot of good games as well. And Alu especially surprised me a lot this event. I mean, I kind of enjoy playing, seeing Alu play, especially in the AWP, obviously. But I think even as a rifler, he's shown that he's really up there. Obviously, Kerrigan. I think Kerrigan also pulled out some really beast performances, but Alu for me was like the highlight player for them.
Yeah, I think Alu was really consistent. Like he showed up in nearly every game they won.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then like after that, it was either up to like the other four to show up. Like Rain, AZ usually, but sometimes Kerrigan, sometimes Kiyoshima. Like I think the problem with this team, FaZe, is like they played a shitload of close games. I think that's their problem.
They did,
like,
yeah.
They're like, oh, we barely lost to SK. Next day, we barely beat Liquid in like double overtime. Next day, we barely lost to Gambit 14-16. This team's like got problems. Like I feel like they're amping up the pressure on themselves. Like I think they're gonna have a hard time, especially against SK to close games. Like I think that's gonna be their huge problem.
Especially since it's gonna be in a best of 3 now.
Yeah. You get to the 13th round, 14th round, 15th round. Like if FaZe somehow gets there, like it's not gonna be easy for them to close it out. I think. And I think that's gonna be their big problem.
And especially, I do think that also SK has just a deeper map pool. Even though they do have Fox, I think that the experience from the other four, or just in general, the experience from SK, is...
Like, I don't know. I actually think FaZe has like deceptively good map pool, because I think Kerrigan vetoes correctly. But
yeah,
I still favor SK because of the experience. Like, all right, who do we have on FaZe that's shown like a true like legendary like status? Like there's Kerrigan, and then Rain hasn't done that much. AZ hasn't done that much. Alu hasn't done that much, and then there's Kiyoshima. So there's like two guys who've like won championships, but both of them are kind of support players. Whereas in SK's side, four of the 5 players are double major winners, and then they won in 1 or 2 other tournaments, and then they got a bunch of finals and top 4s. Like I'm favoring SK because of the experience of like the
Right.
unit cohesion and like the ability to play under pressure, whereas like FaZe haven't really shown me that.
Right. I think the one thing that SK that might be the win condition for FaZe here is if the pressure between Fallen and Fox becomes more exposed just because it's best of three. Because you're seeing that Fallen is forced to go on that the rifle role when he's the better opper, just because
Yeah.
Fox
Fox
is
is like
strong.
complete trash on, almost complete trash on the rifle.
Exactly. So in a best of three, that becomes a marathon, right? Then you can start on leaning on that. You can start taking more risks on the peaks just because it's not Fallen that's going to be on that position. So I think that's going to be the one thing that they can sort of take advantage of.
Yeah, like even in the game where SK won against Astralis, where Fox had an okay game, Fox only had an okay game one out of like I'm thinking like 10 times if you include this tournament and the last tournament. Those aren't good odds. Those aren't good odds for him to show up every. And then like the time they beat FaZe is because they went triple op like in overtime. You're not gonna get a triple op in regular rounds.
I was just about to say the key to success for SK is gonna be not deciding who's gonna op and who's gonna take the rifle. It's gonna be like who's not gonna get an op. You just give it to everybody. I will say that was an interesting strat though. They did it multiple times actually. I think they did it against both FaZe and Astralis, I want to say.
Yeah, like they had a strat like this early. They had a strat like this on Train years ago, or not years ago. It feels like years ago. But they had like They ran a 5-op setup once. Like
I watched that.
Yeah, a bunch of guys. They can do a bunch of their guys can pick up ops. They do it like the way I think they do it is they usually have Fallen and Cold, but sometimes they'll let Taco pick it up just because he has a better position and they can't let him leave a certain site. So like it's very dependent. But the thing is like I don't think Fox is good enough. Like Fox is like the problem. Like he's not going to be here long, but I feel like that's going to be like the issue for them heading into FaZe, even though I think they're still a really strong unit.
And that's the thing, and I mean, Lurpus tweeted out about this, like, why play around him and not just like have him be dead weight, sort of,
Yeah.
Because if you, and I guess this is the question that every team has to ask themselves when they do get a stand-in, like, do we try to accommodate the stand-in or do we try to make the stand-in accommodate to us? I mean, so far SK has been trying to accommodate to Fox more so than making sure that he fits into the team, right?
Like it's a very Fallen answer to that question. Like Fallen's entire system is based off of like who was this? Like, was it Confucius who said you teach a man to fish? I think it was Confucius, right? Yeah, that's like Fallen's system. He's like he literally is a teacher, right? So he wants like that's his entire system is based around like teaching his players like how he thinks about the game, how each position plays off of each other. So his idea is like basically his team doesn't need as many comms as other teams do because they all understand the entire map better than a majority of other teams. And like it showed here, right? Like SK did win 3-1 and they did like have a really great game against Astralis.
Yeah.
So but like like I said, even in that great game, it depended a lot on like plays Fox does that usually doesn't do, and then like you can expect Cold to have a god game and Fur to have a really good game, but I think you're like gambling too much on it if you think that they can get to the finals with. I mean, they can win this with that kind of lineup or get to the finals with it.
Yeah.
But I do think they have a good chance against FaZe. I picked them to beat FaZe.
All right. The other matchup, or one of the other matchups, or do we want to keep talking about other teams that we thought were surprising? Because I'm not sure if what was it? I expected better from Team Liquid actually. I mean, I know it's an NA. Yeah, I know it's an NA team, right, and that kind of stuff. But I don't know. I thought they had a real chance at placing top 8 like when I saw them, what was it against FaZe? Was it? I thought they should have done better.
Oh, they could have won that one.
Yeah,
But yeah.
yeah. I mean, if they had
and
won
they-
that, if they had won that, they would have basically been legend, right?
Not really, because I think it would depend on them running to Mouse
All
again.
right, yeah, they would have.
Like, but the thing is, like,
Yeah.
even if they beat FaZe there, they might not run to Astralis again, which is much better because Astralis was the worst possible pick for their last choice.
Sure.
All right, so here's the thing about
I was
Liquid. Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead. No. I was just gonna say I was looking at the matches, and I just remembered Liquid faced Mouse in a 4-16, and I just got sad again. So that's all I was gonna say.
You got sad for Mouse.
Yeah, I got sad for Nico. So.
Hashtag free Nico.
Oh, you heard Nico? There's rumors
Yeah.
going around. He's trying to make a freedom stack.
I know.
He's trying to break out of Mouse prison.
He liked the
It's
tweet.
so-
He liked the tweet from Yanko where Yanko is like, "Oh, how much is that buyout clause? I'll chip in."
Let's all chip in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's all chip in.
he needs to get out, man. He needs to get out. I heard he wants to take Lowell and Oscar with him, and then maybe make a European stack with Scream or something. I'm not sure.
That'd be
Could be
cool.
interesting.
Him and Low.
But yeah,
Buddy cop, you know.
he's too good for that team. Like this is a player like he should be on a championship winning team, but he doesn't speak Danish, so I guess it won't work out.
Danish Counter-Strike, everybody. I don't know. Oh yeah, that's all I was gonna say because I was looking at the Liquid matchups and I was going, oh right, the 4-16 one that was
The
number one.
fantastic.
Why'd you give them Nuke number one?
The one where Speedy wants to like go into hibernation for a month out of shame.
Yeah. Oh.
Let's see. Okay, here's the problem with Liquid. I think ELeague is basically proven he's the best NA player, or
Yes.
especially in these high pressure situations. If you don't want to get the best NA player, you have to say he's the best in these high pressure situations. It's like dropping 80 in like 2 games, or some shit. And then their second threat is JDM, who's actually proven he actually wasn't that bad. I think he's pretty decent. Like he was pretty consistent overall, but it's the other three that are having problems. Like Nitro's supposed to be a star, but he hasn't had any star performances. I saw this event.
He was.
Or like multiple events now.
I thought he was awful, that event actually.
Yeah, I don't think it was that great. And then Hiko and Pimp, like they're supposed to be support players, and like they do that okay-ish. But like neither of them are a true leader, like a true in-game leader. Like you need a Zeus or something, or MSL, like or Pronax or one of those guys.
You know what's really funny about Hiko is that multiple times, I want to say it was James when he was commentating in Liquid Game, he's like, "Oh yeah, the famous NA like clutch or whatever."
And then he'd lose.
Yeah, exactly. Every time
Yeah.
he said that, Hiko would just lose that situation, and it just made me think about how, like, when's the last time we've seen that Hiko clutch?
Not for a long time.
Exactly. At least on a big stage, right?
Yeah, at least to be fair, Liquid hasn't been to an event in a long time because they
Alright.
can't qualify.
That's a
But-
good point.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
that's the thing, and I will say that I had higher hopes for them this time around because I thought that
Zeus could answer the problems.
exactly,
But
but
Zeus can only talk 4 timeouts a game, man.
yeah.
What is he supposed to do?
I don't know. It was rough, especially seeing ELeague like carry his team. Like he would drop like 35 kills, and then Nitro would be like, "Oh, I too have kills."
I do have kills. I contributed.
Yeah.
I can't believe you only got 35 Elise.
I don't know. That was like, I don't know. It's just heartbreaking to as well to sometimes.
I don't like on paper this lineup looks good, right?
Exactly,
On paper.
exactly. And especially with the coach as well, right? You see that team on paper and they're like, yeah, sure, like they can make top 8.
But here's the thing, like I'm not sure. I haven't met Zeus. I haven't really talked to him, but like from what I can tell, like he's trying to implement this SK style of like thinking into the lineup. But here's the thing, like SK style thinking is still led by Fallen, who I consider the best in-game leader in the world. Like there isn't anybody even comparable to that kind of leadership
Sure.
on Liquid. Like I feel like they really need one of two things, or maybe both. they need a really great leader, or not even a great leader, just a good leader, like somebody who could like tell them what to do in the game, and then you get the additional bonus of Zeus doing the timeouts, and then they need like a really great support player. But the only great support player in NA is Stanislaw, and he's not leaving Optic. So,
Well, you say that, but now that they didn't, now that they
no,
didn't...
I think he'll stick with that lineup, because this isn't Dota, man. Like you don't break up after every major.
All right.
But
Yeah.
but thing is,
Fair
like,
enough. Fair enough.
Yeah. The thing is, like Optic as a team, like are pretty good, and they're still pretty good. They're still the best in NA, and I think you give them more of a chance. Like, here's the thing, like I think Tarek kind of shit the bed here. Tarek and Mixwell, like against like the, because they were really close to beating VP, if I remember right. And they kind of had chances against Astralis, but neither of them really showed up. Whereas, like, I think Rush and NAF are slowly proving themselves to be more consistent. So if you can get this team to like work a little bit better, I don't see any reason why they would break up right now. That's my opinion.
I know, I agree, but well, and maybe this is the Dota observer in me talking, but some teams do split up for the most random reasons at times, and I don't know. I mean, depending on whether or not there's like a good offer from, say, maybe even Liquid, although I don't know, we'll see.
But the thing is, like, NA teams are weird. Like, I don't really know what they're thinking sometimes. Like the way NA teams work in CS:GO, as far as I can see, is they usually try to get the big name draw, like trying to get the superstar. Like when Cloud9 lost Sean Garris, like you think, oh look, they lost their leader. I guess they're gonna try to get another leader. No, they were trying to get Tarek. Like even though Tarek isn't a leader, they're like, yeah, let's just get another superstar player. Like if Optic break up, I don't know if anybody'd be smart enough to go from Stanislaw first. Like I feel like they try to get the other four.
Yeah, true.
I don't know. They're kind of weird like that. Maybe it's changed. I'm not sure. All right. Was there anything else? Any other teams you wanted to talk about before we went?
No. I think we could pretty much just focus on the playoffs, I guess, the matchups.
All right.
We talked about FaZe SK already, I think, and I guess Navi versus Astralis is, I don't know.
Must watch.
Well, you would probably obviously favor Navi just based on.
Actually, I favor Astralis.
Really?
But, all right. Here's what Navi has going for them is like they've stomped everybody hard in the group stage, right? And that alone makes you think they should be the favorites, right? But here's the problem: we're missing a bunch of data about them. We don't know about their map pool, and they're not telling anybody about their map pool, which is obviously the right move. And all of their wins came off of CT side. And like the problem with Navi before was they don't have a T side. Or they didn't have a T side. We don't know if they have a T side now. So there's a bunch of information missing. Like what I can say is I think in terms of pure firepower, like if everybody hit their peaks, like if everybody on Astralis hit their peaks and everybody on Navi hit the peaks, I think Navi wins out because they have Simple, Flamey, Guardian, and Edward.
I agree.
And then C's is really good. C's can sometimes be really good too, but that's like if you're preying on peaks, and like Guardian hasn't been that great except for one finals, whereas Flamey's been a god, but he's also like if you've seen Flamey's career, he might just turn off randomly. Like we don't know. Like it's hard to say. Like so that's why I'm going with.
He's been playing well though.
Yeah,
he's been playing well so far though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's been playing really well. I think he was the best player in the group stages. But here, the problem with this, I guess the argument for Astralis is this, right? Like they had a much rougher time going through the group stages, but they did win, and they did win, and they beat Optic, they beat G2.
Sure.
They almost beat SK when
yeah.
SK like pulled out some miracle shit, right? And I think Device is playing at a super godlike level. And then Dupree's like a pretty good second option, and then Zinix and Glaive are both really good. The only guy who's missing right now for me for Astralis is Kirby, but like Guardian is Guardian's a bit better than him right now in terms of form. But Astralis has shown they can play both CT side and T side and have deep map pool. So I'm feeling Astralis, but I think I'm feeling Astralis, but I think the finalist from this side of the bracket is going to be from this matchup, Astralis or Navi.
I think he swayed me too. Like I was originally gonna say it's going to be my vote would be with Navi, but just looking at the potential maps for this matchup, so I don't think there's any way that Navi's ever gonna get Cobble, right?
Yeah.
So if they're not gonna get Cobble, and they're probably not gonna get Overpass as well, they're gonna get Mirage, which is probably their third best map, which lines up well with Astralis anyway because they tend to perform well on Mirage. So yeah, I think he swayed me. Originally, I was gonna say it'd have been Navi just because of how much curb stomping they were doing. So
yeah, but I mean, Flamey and Sybil are fucking great though. Like it's hard to argue against that combination.
Yeah. Also, yes.
That's the thing, and I do agree. I do agree with a lot of points you made, and I do think that the Charlottes have a really good shot here. But as much as Device is showing up, and honestly, I'm really happy for him that he is, because I think that he has been pretty underwhelming for me in the past. Like I think, especially after they formed Astralis, like the moment they formed Astralis. I thought that Device should have been stronger than he really was, and he was really underwhelming for me. As good as he is, Flamey and Simple, I mean, they haven't even really been tested yet, it feels, right? So, to me, I don't know, I'll still favor Navi. Let's just put it that way. I'll still favor Navi.
There are arguments either way, but like I said, I'm going with the known quantity over the unknown quantity because there's still gaps of knowledge about Navi that nobody knows about. Like, how are they T side? How's their map pool? Can they keep doing this? Because we haven't seen them. The last time we saw them like this was like ESL New York, and it was still a bit different from now. Like, we don't really know. All right, so the next one is Fnatic Gambit. Yeah. This one's hard to guess.
It is really.
All right, so Fnatic are winners. So what I want to say first. Olaf and Crims, they're fucking winners. They are the winners of the winners. Like,
yeah,
I didn't have them even making it to the playoffs, but really it's just Olaf and Crims. Like,
I'm on Gambit on this one though. I would say.
You're going with Gambit. Yeah, like I feel like as a team, Gambit is better. But like Fnatic,
I think the combination. Yeah, I think Fnatic has the experience advantage, but just looking at sheer firepower to support ratio, Adrian and Hobbit are just combining for so many insane, just hard carries. When you look at especially I think round 4 and round 5 games, the last 2 days.
Yeah, Adrian was a fucking monster. Like
Jesus. Yeah,
like
I think he's actually on top in ADR right now.
No, I think Flamey still is because he got like something.
Is it still Flamey?
Games, but like Adren is like really high up there. He's like second, and this is Adren
probably games.
So, all right.
So I think Gambit will just have it in sheer firepower though. But yeah, go ahead.
Here's the thing: is like we saw Gambit versus Godsent, right? And like we saw JW and Flesha go fucking crazy. Like Olaf and Crims go fucking crazy too. And then Twist and Dennis have also proven. Actually, Dennis has been much more quiet this tournament, so I won't say him. But I think Twist has it in him. Disco Doplin is in the wrong role. He's in the wrong team. And he's in the wrong role. He's lost in this lineup, so it's going to be on the other 4 to do something. I think that's like the problem of why it makes more sense to side with Gambit here. Is like everybody has something they should do and did do in Gambit. Whereas like Fnatic, like Disco is nowhere. Like Dennis is like spending most of his time in game leading, so it's just up to the other 3 and Dennis sometimes. I will say this. Okay.
No, go ahead. No, you go first.
Then there's one last point. Is like I think Hobbit still hasn't like reached his final form. Like I think Adren's been the monster, but usually but like a Hobbit was much better at DreamHack Winter. So if he with all this experience he got, maybe he can like play a little bit better, and that just might be enough to take him over the top too.
I was gonna say that if you also look at Part of the reason why I think Gambit is going to take it over Fnatic is because Disco Doppelin looks lost in those games, that he's such a prime target for Zeus. So Zeus, I think, is working in this tournament at least just because Adren and Hobbit can take off a lot of the pressure from Zeus. Zeus is free to do his own thing. And when Zeus is free to do his own thing, he can just pick on Disco Doppelin. So I think that's what's going to happen in their matchup. So
he's just going to find app, pinpoint him.
Yeah, just... Well, look at that guy. It's gonna be that meme where you have the John Travolta from Pulp Fiction. He's looking around and he's dead. So I think that's what's gonna happen with Fnatic and Gambit.
I will also say, and this is why also I'm picking Gambit, is that to me Gambit, and I mean I guess there's not a lot of like really good. Well, never mind. But I do think that they looked better in their loss versus VP than Fnatic did when they lost to G2. Just because, I don't know, Gambit to me just looks more consistent as well, more so than Fnatic. Because to me, Fnatic, well, I'm trying to figure out which game it was anymore, but I think one of the games they probably shouldn't even have won. Trying to figure out which one it was right now.
Fnatic?
Let's see.
It might have been North?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think North should have won against them. And it was just more so North in capabilities rather than. Well, I'm not trying to take anything away from Fnatic. I do think that Olaf Mice especially has like you said earlier, Olaf Mice and Crims are showing that they are also back, or not back, but they're also still
back. They're good enough.
Yeah, they're like still. That's the reason why they are champions, right? They're still good enough to, even in that form, sort of, that they're still good enough to beat teams. So
yeah, the leadership edge definitely goes to Gambit.
Yeah.
And like the team identity edge goes Gambit. So really, I guess you have to bet on firepower. But like Adren showed himself to be a monster. Hobbit's really good. Mo's been pretty good too. And then like Doja and Zeus are pretty decent for support players. Whereas like Disco's missing, and then you only have Olaf, Crims, Twist, and Dennis, which sounds better than it is because Dennis is like busy in-game leadering. So yeah, I mean, there's a chance like. That championship quality of the championship quality of those two specific players, Olaf and Crims, is pretty high. Like JW and Flush has showed they can nearly eliminate North with just that. Right, so.
All right. I guess last matchup is Virtus Pro versus North, though I guess you kind of already alluded to it a little bit.
Yeah. This one's really interesting because I feel like Virtus Pro don't really show up until the playoffs, usually.
Yeah.
And then North had a hard time, and then they slowly made it back. Apparently, Config was using the wrong configuration, and then after he changed that, he started showing up in games again.
I saw your tweet about that.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, Virtus Pro is probably going to this matchup like, this Config guy is literally crazy. He's literally off his rocker. He would knife in a 1v1 in an elimination match in the major. Like
in overtime.
In overtime. Like this is Config's proven himself to be fucking crazy. Which is I guess kinda cool, but Virtus Pro I don't think will care. Like I'm gonna go like okay, this is really weird because I think North and Virtus Pro, like North did beat them at Epicenter, right? Like I'm not imagining this. Yeah, I think they beat them. They did. And then that was when Virtus Pro was in their plow mode. Like they were really really good that tournament. But I don't think Virtus Pro will be cut off twice. And for North, this is their first time in the legend in a legend spot where, like, if you're them and you look at this bracket, you think this is as good as a bracket you can get to make a run to the finals and possibly win.
Pretty much.
Right.
Pretty much.
So I feel like if they're more likely to crack than Virtus Pro because I don't think Virtus Pro ever cracks.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's the thing though. They may not crack, but sometimes they just don't show up either. Like that's the thing, and that's where you said it before. You never really know which Virtus Pro shows up. That's the thing. They might not crack under pressure, but they might just not be there mentally at all. And I guess the question is, if they do show up, is North still capable of beating them?
Mm-hmm. So it's very up in the air. Like, And the thing is, like North lacked a dimension of their strength that they couldn't show in the group stages, just because they were all best of ones, and I think they're better in a best of three, just because they have a deeper map pool than most of these teams. So they could get like an auto win in a best of three, whereas they can't do that in a best of one. But the same thing can be said about Virtus Pro, and then Virtus Pro kind of smash everybody. So I'm gonna go with Virtus Pro just because I think Snacks is more reliable than either Magix or Config.
All right.
What do you guys?
I agree, especially if you look at the last game that North had versus Godsend, was it? I tried to look at a lot of Magic's plays, and I think that's pretty much hits the nail on the head. Like, he didn't strike me as consistent whatsoever. Like, he would sometimes have those like really sick rotations where he will, or not rotations, but like those aggressive pushes where he would catch Godsend off guard when they were rotating on overpass. But sometimes he just like completely stupid and be like, oh, I guess I'm dead now. I don't know. It's
I feel like VP have more bags of tricks if they fall down, whereas North does not. So, like if North kind of like collapse, they don't have like a deep bag of tricks and like mental grit.
And
whereas
North,
I think VP do.
And North in general also just has sometimes these stupid mistakes that they make. You remember that one situation in Overpass when they, it was also against Godsend, when they had the two players on long, they were holding a CT, and Cajun was standing there with the AWP on the flower pots, and nobody made sure to, like, they were completely open on short. Like, technically somebody could have pushed short and bathrooms as well, right? And then they did get caught off guard, and they got killed by the one guy. Everything was JW that pushed bathrooms. That's like, they have so many situations like that. Not necessarily, obviously, when they lose two people at once, but it's just, I don't know. To me, that Virtus Pro is just, right now, I think Virtus Pro is a stronger team for me.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm on board. I'm learning a lot. I think if people watching this and I'm not contributing a lot, because CS:GO is my, it's the weakest, it's the esport with the least knowledge that I have. So I'm really enjoying just listening to the two of you just talk through it.
Don't worry, we'll at some point I'm sure we'll add a Overwatch section to this podcast, and then you'll have more to say.
Yeah, you get up there. Yeah.
It's fine. When Sam comes back though, I'll be back to the civilian lineup, just listening to. It's fine. I enjoyed it. I was looking at some of the things you were saying. I'm looking at the HLTV stats and I was going, yeah, you know what? Magisk, he's been having great performances and he's having great ratings in some of these matchups. But when you compare him to Snacks, I'm seeing it. So probably placing a bet on these guys now.
I guess that was it for this week. I mean, we kind of overdid it a little bit. I think we're at roughly 2 hours now, but I don't know. I mean, there was a lot to talk about. 2 tournaments, 2 sort of like bigger tournaments as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, the major's now gonna wrap up. I mean, there was like a huge group stage as well. It was like 3 days and 8 fixtures per day or something.
Yeah, some 8 or 9.
Yeah. So it's pretty insane. Yeah. Thanks, guys, for joining me again. It was a lot of fun. Hopefully, we'll talk next week again.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any shoutouts? Want to plug your Twitters? Want to plug your channels? Want to do whatever? Any articles that people should read up on?
I did a 3x3 sell for CS:GO just now. I think it's already up on Slingshot. If you want to read that. Besides that, nothing I can think of.
All right. How about you, Pao?
Well, you can find me at Twitter at the Sandara. The other things that I work on are mostly for local websites, so they're all in Filipino language. So I don't think it might be a good idea to watch me there. But if you're from the Philippines, sure, go ahead. You can find me at Wombo Combo. It's the new place I'm working with right now, so you can also find me there. But mostly Twitter. Twitter.
The _Sandata, right?
No, it's all one word.
Oh, really?
The Sandata, yeah.
Really? Did I have it wrong?
Yeah.
God damn it. Alright, overlay's been wrong, guys.
The entire time.
Skin fucked up. Oh, it is actually. Why did I have the underscore? Oh my god. This is first class skim sabotage right here. Let me just.
Hey, it's called Your Average Esports Podcast. It's 2 hours long.
Yeah, nobody expects any high quality here. Yeah, nobody expects high quality. All right, thanks guys for tuning in, and see you guys next week.